Okay, and here we go. So welcome everyone. We're so glad you could make it this morning. We only have 3 hours, so we've got a lot to do. This is the CalTPA deep dive, looking at the multiple subject and the PK-3 early childhood education in specialist instruction credential, CalTPAs. We will be reviewing the changes from version 1 as we launch into the new year of version 2. And today is August 13th, 2026. It's a new school year. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Just as a reminder of the different logos, the different colors of the guide, so you can stay organized as well. Green is for CalTPA. This is for Gen Ed. This is for multiple subjects and single subject and world language. You will notice those guides and templates in green. The beautiful purple is our PK-3, early childhood education and specialist instruction. In orangish red is our 5 EdSped areas, and in the beautiful teal color is CalAPA. So just as a way to help you stay organized as well. Our agenda for today, we're going to start with introductions, norms, and outcomes. We'll move into our resource Google folder for you. We will talk about the CalTPA structure and theory of action. We will talk about accessing materials, which is top on the list, some of the faculty policies, as well as resources. We will then move into MPA, and I will review MPA steps 1 through 4 for version 2, and then Marissa will take over and go over the LPA, Literacy Performance Assessment, steps 1 through 4 for version 2. We'll talk about condition codes, and then we will talk about upcoming supports for the year and our new calendar of events and contact information. So who are we? It's good to see you. I'm Julie Holmes. I'm one of the consultants on the performance assessment team. I'm the point person for the math cycle. And we have our director, Juliet Wallleitner. She is our director of the Division of Research, Data, and Assessment. I'm joined by my colleague, Marissa Luna Lopez, and I'll turn it over to her to introduce herself.
Good morning, everyone. Marissa Luna Lopez, and I'm happy to see everyone here today and excited for version 2. And I will be supporting cycle 2 for those of you who are in the single subject world language world and the literacy performance assessment this academic year. And I think I saw Patricia Lane, our other, we're the three amigos, in the performance assessment development team. Patricia, you want to say good morning?
Yes, good morning, everyone. I'm Patricia Lane. I'm the newest member to the performance assessment team, and I support CalAPA. So it's great to see all of you and learn with and from you.
All right,
Julie?
that's the team. I also want to take a moment and introduce our early childhood education team. So I'm going to kick it over to Renee Marshall right now.
Thank you so much, Julie. It's great to be here today. I see a lot of familiar faces on the screen. I love it when you log into a call and you literally see somebody you worked with like 20 years ago. So it's wonderful to be together, everybody. My name's Renee Marshall. I'm the Administrator of Early Childhood Education at the Commission, everything related to ECE teacher prep. So if you need anything related to the PK-3 ECE Specialist Instruction Credential, anything related to the Child Development Permit, we are your team to go to, and we work directly with our performance assessment team and we just always have a good time together. So I think it's just me today. I know Deb was planning on being here, so I hope everything's okay with her because I don't see her online right now, Julie. I'm not sure if you do.
I'm here.
Oh,
Yeah.
excellent. Oh, excellent.
I
Hey,
thought I
then
saw
we'll
her
hand
come
it right
in.
over to Dr. Keeler. Perfect. Awesome.
Thank you so much. It's a joy to be here today. And my name is Debbie Keeler. I'm a consultant with the Commission. And also, I'm on the ECE team. And like Renee said, we are here to be able to answer any questions and serve you. My primary role is working on projects, the Child Development Permit, and assisting with supporting with other work like the PK-3 credential. And again, we're delighted that you're here. And thank you, Julie, for letting us be a part.
Absolutely. We're so grateful. All right. And with that, we want to know who you are. So go ahead and open your chat at the bottom of the screen. Include your name, introduce yourself, add your name, your position, your institution. also test out that chat feature, knowing that that works. So go ahead and take a moment to do that. We'll see that start to roll in. And while you are busy doing that, I'll kind of review our norms and outcomes today. So we just ask that you just please keep your microphone muted unless you have a question. We're happy to answer questions. And at the end of the presentation, Marissa and I like to stay on and answer any questions as well. So just know you'll have that opportunity. Again, using that chat feature, you can post questions. We will get to them, and just ask that they keep it open to a general focus and not credentials specific to a candidate or anything like that. And then just honor time by moderating your participation today. We want to give everyone a chance to ask questions and participate if they so choose to. Our outcomes for today, we are going over version 2 for the new academic year for 26-27. We'll talk about the guides, what changes, and a little bit about the templates as well. So we'll go over those updates, and we'll also have a big year ahead of program support. So we really want to talk to you about that and review that with you at the end of the presentation today. Materials. We have a Google resource folder for you. Marissa's going to drop that in the chat. Thank you. Within that resource folder, we have the assessment guides and the templates. We have, as a reminder for the ADS system, we have a user guide and the overview if you need to change who the program coordinator is for a particular credential area at your institution. So that information also lives in there. As a reminder, results analyzer, where you get the data from evaluation systems each month, that is also in there if you need a refresher on how to kind of navigate that results analyzer data. And at the end of today's presentation, we will PDF this whole presentation and we'll put it in the Google resource folder. But we do like to wait till the end of the presentation. So we will have that later today. Let's get started and look at our structure for the multiple subjects and PK-3 ECE. So for these candidates that are seeking this credential area, they are required, as the TPA requirement, to complete the Math Performance Assessment, the MPA, and the LPA, which is the Literacy Performance Assessment. So completion of those two completes their TPA requirement for their preliminary credential program. The Math Performance Assessment is learning about students or children. If they're PK-3, we say children instead of students, and planning that math instruction. That's planning one lesson. We will go through the MPA in depth today, where they are going through the 4 steps of planning, teach and assess, reflect, and apply. And the second cycle, the literacy performance assessment, that is the assessment-driven piece. So assessment-driven literacy instruction. They are also going through the 4 steps, but they are planning 3 lessons. They are including that assessment-driven literacy instruction where they plan, teach and assess, reflect, and apply. These can be done in either order, depends on your credential program, your structure, your coursework. But again, with the MPA, that is 1 lesson, whereas LPA is 3 lessons. That includes the assessment-driven piece. Accessing materials. This has been a big thing. So we have this slide dedicated on the left here through evaluation systems on their website, and we've linked it here for their policy and resources. You can access the required acceptable and unacceptable supports. You can access faculty guidelines for confidentiality for video recordings. There is other faculty resources available to you. The assessment materials will be on there. They will not be password protected this year as they have been in the past. There might, in fact, we just had this conversation the other day. There might still be, when you download the zip folder, there might still be a password. If there is, don't worry, Marissa and I will share it out widely with the field. But I think that we had landed on not having it password protected. Again, on the ES Evaluation Systems website, you'll see other guides and resources for prep materials for candidates and how to prepare, implementation resources for you, the program, how to request vouchers. If you, the program, want to pre-purchase vouchers that can be then shared out with your candidates. And we will have some TPA sample submissions. Those are coming soon. So coming in the fall. Now on the right here, we have what we have hosted on the CTC website page, and we just sent this out yesterday. So again, we have the link to our resources page on the commission website where we have all of the version 2 guides and templates. No password needed. It's available for you to download or share it with your candidates and they can go there and download as well. So we'll have it living in both places on evaluation systems and the CTC site. We have a link to the approved passing standard. We have a link to secondary passing standard if you need to download the CL911 form or need a refresher on what is the approved secondary passing standard. We also have the TPA design standards. And when you're on the resources page on the left menu, you'll see a link to our 2026-27 calendar of events. We have pre-populated for the whole school year all of our webinars by month. It's a beautiful calendar. You can go in and you can just click through what is applicable to you and go ahead and register and join. Sorry, not join yet, but register for those upcoming webinars. As a reminder, the CalTPA passing standard for this school year for version 2 is the same as last year. For the MPA, it is 16 points to pass, and candidates can receive more than one score of a 1 as long as they have 16 or more points. Or if they're eligible and they receive a 14 or a 15, then that becomes a programmatic decision and they are eligible if you, the program, determine that they have met the TPEs to be recommended under the secondary passing standard. So it's same for LPA 16-14, just like last year. Here is the 2026-27 submission deadline dates. If you've not looked at this chart before, on the right is your submit by date. And then on the left is when you receive those candidates receive those actual scores. So it's kind of a great backwards planning tool. If they want or need their scores by September 17th, then they would have to submit on or before August 27th. So that's a good way to kind of read this chart as candidates backwards map. And just to point out that at the very bottom on the right, the last date to submit version 2 and have it scored using version 2 rubrics would be July 1st of 2027 for the academic year. And with that, we'll launch into the math performance assessment cycle, the MPA, learning about students or children for PK-3 and planning that math instruction. I want to start with some reminders for steps 1, 2, 3, and 4 before I launch into the guide. This will just kind of help guide you about some of the big changes to keep in mind for the year as we move into. Across multiple subjects in PK-3 ECE, rubric 1.1 in step 1 planning, there used to be in the old version a level 1 construct, an automatic level 1 there was inaccuracies in their math content, or they did not use grade level strands or standards. We have now for version 2 integrated that across levels 2 and 3, and I'll show you that when we get to the guide. Part A, template, the page limit has decreased from 7 to 4 pages. So we have a decrease there, and I'll talk about why. In Part A template for the focus student or the focus child section, that used to live in Part A template that has been moved to the Part C template, where that is just dedicated to the focus student or focus children for PK-3. Part B template, the page limit has decreased from 10 to 5. That is the math lesson plan. Also, the Part B template, which used to be optional in version 1, is no longer optional. We were just seeing that candidates were being impacted because perhaps the lesson plan template that programs were using was not aligned to the prompts. So we do have a Part B template for candidates to use. Part C, page limit has increased because we moved all of that focus student section over to Part C. So that's gone from 7 up to 10 pages. And you will see why when we get there. And Part C, and then the focus student, focus child section has been moved, of course, talked about that. One big key thing to keep in mind, this is not necessarily a change, this is a reminder. Candidates going through the multiple subjects will have a focus on higher order thinking, whereas PK-3 early childhood education have a focus on play-based learning. So as I go through the guide today, I will point out the differences between multiple subjects and PK-3, but just keep in mind, if they're multiple subjects, that focuses on higher order thinking, and PK has a focus on play-based learning. Now, as candidates move into step 2, teach and assess. I know this looks like a lot. I just wanted to put this in here so that you have it kind of at a glance. In part E, the video clip emphasis has shifted, and they're slightly different between multiple subjects and PK-3, but these are the 5 areas that candidates will be demonstrating in their video, and they'll be describing in their commentary. So maintaining a safe, positive learning environment, engaging the students or children in higher order thinking for multiple subjects, or for PK-3, engaging the children in play-based learning during the math activity, using a UDL-focused strategy or strategies, it could be one, it could be multiple, to support students during the math lesson. And PK-3, instead of lesson, we say activity. So just another note, another change to note, but that's not different from version 1. Implementing strategies to monitor and support students' progress or children's progress for PK-3, and responding intentionally to support student learning or children's learning. Now, the last rubric in 1.5, the last level 1 construct, this also has been integrated across levels 2 and 3. I will point that out when we get there. But this was about, this was an automatic level 1. If the teaching of the presented content was inaccurate, and or the lesson that they planned in step 1 is not reflected in any of the step 2 videos. And yes, we have seen that. They planned something and then we're seeing something totally different in step 2. So that used to be an automatic level 1, but we've integrated it across 2 and 3. The Part F commentary is now aligned by prompt, not clip. So each prompt will ask for the clip number and the timestamp so the candidate can directly pinpoint us directly to how they're demonstrating one of those 5 things in this chart. I'll preview it for you if you haven't looked at it already. And then across rubrics 1.5 and 6, candidates are required to demonstrate in the video and describe in the commentary. So doing both is very important. That is evidence that we can score. If they are describing it but not demonstrating it, that is not scorable evidence. A reminder for step 3, our Part G reflection template has decreased from 7 to 5 pages because we've really changed the prompts. I'm excited to show you step 3. And there is an emphasis on impact on their instruction versus version 1, where we said effectiveness. What was the effectiveness of blah, blah, blah? Reflect on the emphasis of your teaching of this or that. So impact is now the word of the day for step 3. And a reminder for step 4, that last construct that said, and this would trip up candidates, and I hope you agree, and maybe you disagree, but where it said refer to appropriate evidence from steps 1, 2, and or 3. We are now saying use a specific example or examples from steps 1, 2, or 3. So pick something out and tell us and use that specific example. And we hope that language change is really helpful to candidates and prompts them to give us that specific example instead of something more ambiguous like saying refer to evidence. Okay, and with that, give me a moment. Let me go to the guide. I am going to use the multiple subjects guide, but I will point out differences between this and PK-3. And let me pause real quick. Marissa, I can't see the chat because I'm kind of navigating the dashboard. Any questions I need to pause real quick before I launch?
No, I didn't see any.
Okay.
I just saw that some folks are waiting for the crosswalks to be released,
Oh,
and the crosswalks this year are going to focus on major themes that were updated in from version 1 to version 2. So it's not that document that ES has produced in the past where it's literally every single word that's different. And so what we share in the slide deck is actually what is the crosswalk. And given the formatting of the rubrics and many of the constructs, they are significantly different than version 1. So just to update folks about that, we will be releasing those crosswalks later this month or early next month.
Yeah, thanks, Marissa.
Really quickly, Marissa, can you clarify what a crosswalk is? That question
Oh,
came in.
sure. Sure. The crosswalks are typically a document that ES prepares that when they go through the assessment guide and say, on page this word changed, on page this thing changed. And so because of the significant number of changes from version 1 to version 2, they did not prepare that document because it would have been about as long as the document. And so we went through and did by section what was asked for in version 1, what's asked for in version 2, and then significant things to note about the changes.
Okay, great question.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah, consider this your crosswalk because I'm going to go through a lot and I'm just got my little annotation tool and I'm just going to call out some things to you and point them out, big changes, because yes, we do want you to have that clarity. All right.
And Julie, you're pulling these materials off the website. Everything on the website is final now, right?
Everything on the CTC website, I haven't looked at ES today. They were posting them, I think, yesterday. So everything is final. Everything is final, including if a template says draft on it, I'm going to talk to the IT department and have them change that because some people were saying when they download a template, it might say the word draft. But everything up there is final version. I pulled this morning, about an hour ago, off of the CTC website. So everything's ready to go. All right, let's launch into the multiple subjects math cycle. Version 2, you'll see a big red V2 at the bottom. So always make sure that your candidates are in version 2. Let's get started. I'm just going to kind of skip over some things that have not changed. I hope that's okay because there's so much to talk about today. So I'm just kind of leap of faith that you are already familiar with version 1 somewhat and or how the math cycle itself. So let's kind of get started for this kind of big crosswalk, if you will. All right. So as you kind of launch into the year with your candidates, it is great to go over the overview. And what we have done is left the structure in place. We've changed a few things, so hold on, but going over this with your candidates so that they are familiar with strands and standards depending on their clinical placement setting. They're familiar with PTKLF. If they are in a PK or TK setting, they are familiar with using California Common Core State Standards for math if they are in kinder all the way through grade 12 setting. All right, we have done, right when we get to overview, we've added this little section because sometimes this trips people up and they don't know if they're in the right setting or not. So if they are seeking a multiple subjects credential and they're using the multiple subjects CalTPA math cycle, they are required to provide math instruction to students in grades TK and above. They are required to teach a group. A group is 3 or more. That is a bit of a change from last year. So group, 3 or more. And select 3 focus students for whom they will adapt their instruction. And let me pause because this gave a lot of confusion last year. So teaching a group of 3 or more. If that group is their 3 focus students or 3 focused children if they're PK-3, that is fine. They have met that requirement. They are teaching a group of 3 or more. So if they're teaching a group of 10 students or children, and within that group of 10, there are 3 focus students, great. But 3 focus students or children is the minimum. So I hope that that helps clarify. Let me pause because that was confusing last year. Marissa, good. Okay, I'll just look to
Well,
you.
I was going to say
Kind of guide
that
me.
we've had folks say, well, if I only film with three and I'm supposed to be protecting the anonymity of my focus students, how can we do
Mhm.
that? Well, the video protecting the anonymity of a focus child is important in writing and in the templates and when talking about video. But the reality is, if you only are filming with three students, then it is going to be assumed that those three students are the focus students or focus children. And when you are in, we've seen candidates do this kind of thing where there's like student A, what did you do? And student B, it's just so weird that when people do that, and it makes it just like gives this inauthentic feel to the video, and it's uncomfortable for children and students. They are typically called by their name. And so as long as the candidate is not referring to them by first and last name, or if the candidate feels more comfortable, the way they place their camera, maybe it sees that, they're sitting at a table and the candidate's facing the camera and the children are facing the teacher and you only see the back of their head, but you can see the interactions and hear the voices. If that makes a candidate feel more comfortable, they absolutely can do that. But we have defined a group for both the MPA and the LPA as three or more, just to make sure that it is the same across both assessments, to lessen the amount of like, okay, how many kids in this video and how many kids in this video kind of thing.
Yeah. Okay. Nice. All right. So going back to the overview, this is important to, as you know, walk through with your candidates, but big changes, again, just pointing out for the recording that they are showing and demonstrating these 5 things. We will talk about that when we get to step 2. Let me just kind of keep going. Essential questions have changed slightly. So important for you to kind of walk through again and read these before as it frames the framework of the rubric. So important to, of course, review any changes there. And then from our Wednesday candidate office hours, Marissa and Patricia and I have learned that when we point out to candidates that there was a chapter about how rubrics, I'm sorry, not how rubrics are scored, but submitting evidence, that we decided from that and our talk with candidates that they really needed to understand how rubrics are scored. And that wasn't in the guide before. So we intentionally put this little section here so that candidates would understand exactly how scoring begins with a level 3 and looking for clear evidence, and how it would then navigate down to a level 2 if clear evidence was not found, and down to a level 1 if no evidence was found, and vice versa, starting with a level 3. And if all evidence was met, then they would move on to a 4 and subsequently up to a 5 if evidence was found there. So this is important to talk about, is navigating rubrics, because I think that this is gives candidates a really great understanding of how they're being assessed. So we have added this little section here. And then, as I mentioned, we have our evidence table, and below that, submitting evidence. So this is key, because for someone like me, I like to know exactly what's required of me before I begin something. So I just wanted to point out that this walks them through all of those little details about how to label their files, how to what to submit. This talks about translations and transcriptions. This is important if you have candidates in bilingual or dual immersion settings. When translations or transcriptions are not required, so for candidates in a dual immersion setting, they can complete all of their templates and videos in the language of instruction, with the exception of the step 3 reflection template, which must be done primarily in English, just primarily in English. So this is also important for those candidates that are in those bilingual settings. And then it gets into the real nitty-gritty about the specifications. This is also similarly in the LPA, the same section about submitting evidence. So, for example, Part A, up to 4 pages, the type of file type that's allowable for them to upload. They use 11-point font, all that good stuff. Stick to the template, stick to the brackets, and you'll be fine. All right, so that is all in there. I'm going to skip ahead and we'll move into step one, planning. Now, math cycle, they're planning one asset-based UDL-focused math lesson that they will teach to a group of 3 or more students during their clinical practice placement. I'm going to jump over here real quick to PK-3. Excuse me for scrolling. I wish it did it automatically and kept the two side by side, but it doesn't. Hold on. Close your eyes. All right. In PK-3, they're planning one play-based UDL-focused math lesson that they will teach to a group of 3 or more children during their clinical practice placement. So step one begins with getting to know your students, getting to working with your cooperating teacher, your faculty member, reviewing that recent available information about the group of 3 or more that they will engage in this math lesson. Now for template A, remember, this has decreased, I think, from 7 to 4 pages because they are just writing about the group. And here are the prompts. This is all of template A. It's very short. In fact, they have up to 4 pages. They don't have to write 4 pages. This is sometimes a common misunderstanding where candidates perhaps think that because we say up to 4 that they have to really write a lot and provide up to 4, a total of 4 pages. But if they can say everything that they need to say in 2 to 3 pages or 1 page or however, it is up to the candidate. We just have to give a maximum number of pages or else we might get 20 pages. So just keep that in mind and convey that to your candidates that this is a total maximum and they don't have to provide that much information. But more specificity is better, as you know. So we're looking for specific information, but if they can be succinct about it, that's fine too. All right, now we get into the template B, the math lesson plan template. This is no longer optional. So this is where they are selecting their state strands or standards. Again, if they're TK, in a TK setting, they are using the PTKLF. If they are in a K through 12, they're using California Common Core. For PK-3, again, if they are in a PK or TK setting, they are using the California Preschool Transitional Kindergarten Learning Foundations, PTKLF, or if they are in a K through 3 setting, California Common Core State Standards for Math. We have our learning goals chunked here together where they are writing their one math content and practice learning goal, and they're writing their one math academic language development learning goal. Then they are summarizing their math activity or activities that they're going to be doing in the one lesson. And within that lesson, they're describing the following. So you'll see how much shorter. This is why we decreased the page limit size for template B for the math activity, math lesson. Of course, just calling out, we still have examples on how to write a TK math learning goal or a K through 12 learning goal. So you can go over that with your student. Sorry, I say your students, sorry, your candidates. How to write an academic language development learning goal. And then we did add, we got this question a lot last year. For candidates in a bilingual or dual immersion setting, the academic language learning goal should be in the language of instruction that is being taught to the group. So just to help clarify that. Now we get into template C, and this had the most changes, but I'm really excited about these changes. So hopefully you are too. So that again moved all the focus student information about focus student 1, 2, or 3 or focus child all the way into part C. So it's a one-stop shop where they are writing just, and all of that information is right in that one spot. So focus student 1 remains the same as last year. This is that student who needs additional support with their math academic language development or child. And then we have our prompts. These are the prompts that you will find in rubric, you will find in template C, and that aligns directly to rubric 1.2. So there is, I love this alignment in the math cycle. As you kind of look over these, you'll notice some that you recognize from part A, give us that snapshot, that overview of this student or child, their age, their grade level, what are their knowledge, skills, and or abilities, such as their present level of performance, just as a kind of cue for the candidate. Just identify what is this focus student's specific math ALD learning needs. Identify their the adaptations that you plan to make. Describe how the adaptations for this focus student are based on recent learning observations and or math assessment results, such as formative, summative, or state testing. Describe their assets and or interests. Now, here is another big change that you'll notice in the math cycle and the LPA. We used to say assets, parens, I think, e.g., cultural and or linguistic, and then we'd say and or interests. So we took out that parens because we felt like, and we talked to candidates, that it was limiting them and their focus to look at a student's assets or a child's assets. So we remove that so they don't have to focus on a cultural or a linguistic asset. They could be, there's lots of assets that students have and children have. So we didn't want to be limiting in our language. But again, this is that asset-based approach to learning. So describing their assets and or interests that are relevant to supporting this student or child in the lesson, and explain how you are going to leverage those to support their learning and their learning needs. Now, this last bullet, I want to call out because when I get to the rubric, this talks about, this is in level 3, it's in level 4, and it's in level 5. So this really prompts them up to really do well on this particular rubric 1.1. So they are describing the adaptation or adaptations. When you see that paren S, it can be one thing, it can be more than one thing. We're not limiting them. They will make to the instructional content to support Focus Student 1's math ALD learning needs through reading, writing, listening, and or speaking, using multiple modes of communication. When we get to multiple modes, that's in level 4. So they're describing the adaptations. That's the level 3. Using through reading, writing, speaking, and or listening, that's the level 3. The level 4 is using multiple modes of communication. And then the level 5 is on what evidence-based practice or research did you base your decision. It all works together to describe the adaptation and the support for their learning needs. So we just wanted to call that out to you. So when we get to the rubric, I'll point that out. Focus Student 2 is just like last year. This is that student or child who requires additional support in making progress towards meeting the grade level math content practice standard, standard and or practice standard, or they have gaps in math understanding or misconceptions related to expected grade level math. So again, same prompts as you see for Focus Student 1, except for this last bullet. That is specific to Focus Student 2. As we move into Focus Student 3, this is a student or child whose life experiences inside or outside of school result in the need for additional adaptations to support their well-being and or their behavior in class. Again, prompts are the same as for the other focused children and students, except this last bullet. So we really thought about this and looked at the data from last year from version 1. And it felt sometimes like candidates weren't quite sure about adaptations for a student or child who was having some well-being and or behavioral issues in class. So little big change here, not a little big change, doesn't make sense. They're describing the targeted proactive plan, and this is added to the glossary, such as structured routines, frequent breaks, safe stays, positive reinforcement, minimizing triggering language, things like that. They're describing that targeted proactive plan that they are going to make for this student and the adaptations that they'll make to the instructional content and the physical, social, emotional environment. All of this to support this focused child's well-being and or behavior to meet their math learning needs. We'll talk about this too when we get to rubric 1.4. And then, of course, it has not changed, but part D, they're writing a description or it could be both. They're including screenshots of and images of the resources that they're going to use. This helps paint the picture of the math lesson or activity that they're going to be doing. All right. We're excited about this change. You'll see this in LPA too. First of all, it's changed from landscape to portrait because it was hard to kind of scroll across the screen as it was wider because we had levels 1, 2, 3, 4 outlined. So you'll see the staggered of levels 4 and 5 up here. You'll see them staggered like this, one above the other. But the biggest change is in level 3. It is in a call-out box. It is blue. It is pointing to the candidate that this is the target level. This meets the TPEs. This meets the rubric constructs. This meets the evidence that we're asking for. So this is the target in the blue box. We're hopeful that, and can't wait to get feedback from you, that this is helpful to candidates as they look at the rubric and go, oh, okay, I need to hit a level 3. Also, that description is in the beginning of the guide about how rubrics are scored so that they are clear that this is the target. And now, again, if they meet all of the level 3 constructs and there's clear evidence found, then they would be considered for a level 4, because a level 4 is they have to meet all of level 3 and they have to meet this particular construct, and clear evidence has to be found. Then, and only then, would they be considered for a level 5, and they'd have to meet all of level 3 and 4 to be considered for a 5, and then they would have to meet this particular construct. So important to go over this. So rubric 1.1, always start with the essential question that frames the rubric. I just want to point out that we're using the same language throughout the rubrics. You'll see in a level 3, we say clearly. A level 2, we say vaguely. A level 1, we say does not. Evidence was not found. So that's an important distinction. So starting with level 3, candidate clearly uses information from recent math learning to plan instruction. What does recent mean? Recent can mean lots of things, and I know it's a little subjective, but within the past few months, within this school year, something that is going to give you that present level of performance of where and targeting how that particular student or child is doing. Recent is not something from 3 years ago. Recent is not something, that's out of date and from a different school year. So recent information. Notice the asterisks. Asterisks are under here, under the rubric. What's the word I'm looking for? Where we call out and give little examples sometimes or definitions. So all good things to point out to your candidates. So they're using recent information. The second construct, this is one of the changes I noted in the reminders as I started, that the candidate selects an age or grade level appropriate California State Math Content Strand or Standard and a math practice standard for the students that they plan to teach. So they have to be on target, on grade level for the students that they are teaching. A level 2 would be that they used a California State Math Content Strand or let me start over, rewind. California State Math Content Strand or Standard and or a math practice standard that is either one grade level above or below the students that they plan to teach. Now, in the past, if it was a grade level above or below, it was an automatic level 1. So this is an attempt where they are attempting to use the appropriate age or grade level strand or standard. We do see that a lot where candidates maybe decide, even though they're teaching 3rd grade, that they will use 2nd grade standards and that they have determined that this is the best course of action for their students. That is actually not how the standards are to be used. They are to be selected at grade level and then scaffolded, and so that they can provide supports in helping students achieve that grade level standards, so it is important that they are selecting on point grade level or age level strands or standards. A level 1 would be that they maybe they didn't select an appropriate content strand or standard and or math practice standard, or they didn't select a strand or standard, or they selected a strand or standard that is more than one grade level or above or below the students that they plan to teach. So if they are teaching third grade and they're using first grade or kinder or PTKLF strands or standards, then that would be a level 1. I hope that's clear. That does, we did want to take that automatic level 1 and kind of shift it and integrate it into levels 2 and 3. And hopefully as candidates read this too, they will ask those questions and say, oh, but I teach third grade, but I was going to use second grade standards. And then they come to you as faculty, should I not be doing that? Why would that be? So hopefully that will also then prompt those good conversations. The next construct that they are developing a math learning goal, and again, just calling out the definition, that is clearly based, clearly based on the selected math strand or standard and includes content and practice. So it has to have all of those to meet a level 3. Again, I won't go over all the level 2s. I'm just going to call out big things because I think most of you are familiar with a level 3. There's a lot of ands. They have to have this and or that. That has to be, has to include these certain things. A 2, it might be vague, or you might see the words and or. So they might have one and or the other. So they might have one that's really clear and or the other is unclear. So be on the lookout for those and ors. Next, they're developing a math academic language goal that clearly aligns. We want alignment from how they're supporting their academic language aligned with the math learning goal for content and practice. They're describing how they're going to create a safe, positive learning environment that clearly supports students or children during the math lesson. They're going to clearly describe how they're going to leverage students' assets and or interests, clearly describing how they're going to engage students in higher order thinking to deepen their math understanding. Now, for PK-3, this particular construct is engaging children in play-based learning to deepen their math understanding. And they are clearly describing how they're going to monitor student learning and clearly describing how they're going to use UDL-focused instructional strategy or strategies to support learning. A level 4, I will say this for the math cycle, a lot of the level 4 and 5 constructs have changed. They are different from last year's version 1. So I just really want to point that out. We went through a lot of the data again, and we made some updates, but we're excited about these changes and really you'll see throughout the guide, they're not always prompted for a level 4 or a level 5, as you know. They would have to see the construct in the rubric and incorporate that into their templates for that step. So that's an important thing to call out. Again, we're targeting the level 3. So the levels 4 and 5 is, that above and beyond. And that's wonderful when candidates feel like, yes, I've really got level 3 down. I'm ready to go on to the level 4 and 5. And I want to incorporate some of that into my writing in these templates for my planning or teaching and so on. So level 4 candidates planning clearly includes opportunities for students to learn collaboratively to progress towards the math content and practice and math ALD learning goals. And a 5 would be that the candidate designs a math lesson that reflects the interconnectedness. Why am I having trouble speaking today? Interconnectedness of math plus an additional content, academic content area, such as literacy, history, art, science, PE. So they're connecting math with another academic area. So that is step 1 plan. Now, as we move into rubric 1.2, this is that focus student 1. This is all about focus student 1. This directly ties back to that part C template that I talked about. In level 3, their candidates, their adaptation or adaptations for focus student 1 are clearly based on recent learning. Their adaptations clearly leverage focus student 1's assets and their interests. And remember, I talked about in the guide that last bullet under Focus Student 1. So candidates' planned math activities clearly support Focus Student 1's math academic language development through reading, writing, listening, and or speaking. And if they meet all of that clearly, then they'd move on to level 4, that the adaptations for Focus Student 1 to participate in the math lesson by using multiple modes of communication to support their learning needs. And a 5 would be that they're planning for Focus Student 1's adaptations draw upon and or refers to evidence-based practice and or research appropriate to FS1's ALD. So I just wanted to kind of connect those dots for you back to as, let me scroll back. Sorry, I hate to do this to you. Focus Student 1, here we are, Focus Student 1. Remember, I called out this last bullet. So that really ties to, as I was mentioning, that last construct in level 3. Again, it ties into 4 and 5 as well. And we don't always do that. So curious to see how that works for candidates, but it all works together as they're making those adaptations and really looking deeply at their need or learning needs. All right, this is rubric 1.3, Focus Student 2. It's all about FS2, a child who needs support with their math. Again, these are similar to Focus Student 1. The adaptations are clearly based on recent learning for Focus Student 2. Again, how are they going to clearly leverage Focus Student 2's assets and or interests? And how are the adaptations, how will they clearly support Focus Student 2's math learning need or needs? And how will they do that for the Focus Student to participate in the math lesson by using 2 or more multisensory strategies? Again, that's in the prompt as well in that last bullet for Focus Student 2. And again, same question, but for Focus Student 2. How are those adaptations for Focus Student 2? How will they draw upon and or refer to evidence-based math practices and or research? Again, down here, this one talks about multisensory strategies. You'll see those 3 asterisks. That's right here in the construct again. So for candidates that are like, what does that mean? I don't know. Good conversations, excellent way to incorporate some of these things into coursework and supporting them that way. All right, and last rubric for step 1, 1.4. This is all about, you guessed it, Focus Students 3, the student or child that needs support with their well-being and or their behavior. They are, for Focus Student 3, the adaptations are clearly based on recent learning. The adaptations clearly leverage Focus Student 3's assets and or interests. And the math lesson or activity adaptations, one or the other, one or more, they clearly support Focus Student 3's well-being and or behavior to meet their math learning need or needs. Again, moving into that last bullet that was in the in template C, that the adaptations for Focus Student 3 to participate in the math lesson, they plan adaptations for Focus Student 3 to participate in the math lesson by creating a targeted proactive plan to support Focus Student 3's learning needs. And again, we have proactive plan in the glossary as well as down here at the bottom under the rubric. And if they meet all of that, a level 4, again, same question for Focus Student 3, those adaptations draw upon or reference evidence-based practice and or research. And that wraps up step 1.
Before we move on to step 2, Julie, there's just a couple things in the chat to
Okay.
address. And I wanted to make sure, I know that it can be a little bit challenging with overlapping credentials, but PK-3 is the PK-3 ECE specialist credential authorizes a candidate to teach preschool through grade 3. If you have a PK-3 program at your institution and candidates are enrolled in the PK-3 credential program, that's when they complete the PK-3 version of the TPA. A multiple subject candidate is authorized to teach TK as long as that it's within their credential. So you can have a multiple subjects candidate that is placed in a TK classroom and they should complete the multiple subjects version of the performance assessment. Whatever their credential is, with the one that they're seeking, that's the version of the teacher performance assessment that they should complete. Now, sorry to throw a monkey wrench into this one, but if you have a dual program, let's say a candidate is earning a multiple subjects credential and a MMSN credential, there was information that came out, and candidates can take one TPA in one and one TPA in the other and fulfill that requirement. Their clinical practice placement is the big driving factor and what you should be advising them to do. But I recognize that there's still some confusion out there about TK and where that falls in the spectrum of credentials, but they are overlapping. And Andrea had a wonderful question. I know it's a little bit ahead with the LPA, but no problem. But the big thing is that we need to be working with TK aged children, so it's developmentally appropriate. So if you do have a candidate that's working with TK aged children in a PK placement, that's acceptable as long as they're in that TK age group, because we do recognize that there are overlapping schools now too. So there's overlapping placements, there's overlapping schools, and so we don't want to limit what a candidate can do based on the placement that they're in. So a lot of times for these folks, the job that they have, because they're often interns, we don't want them to have to take away time and energy and effort if they're already working with the right group of students that are acceptable for this performance assessment. It's not the right group of students because it's right. It's just what's been deemed appropriate for the performance assessment. So that's a long answer to probably a shorter question, but I just wanted to make it clear as to who does what TPA. Also, there was a question, Julie, if about the citing of research and best practices. There's a question about is there an example that you're able to provide about what they would do to get to that level 5, that above and beyond?
I don't have an example. Those things we could put on our resources page if helpful. I think
Mm-hmm,
that would be the best time to do that.
mm-hmm.
But that's something that we could do because it is applicable for folks in 1, 2, and 3. So I think that's something we can provide in our resources, which we're working on right now. So yeah, that's a great suggestion. And
Sure, and I
yeah,
think, is it Liesel Murdoch?
Yeah,
Piara, you have a
Lisa.
question?
Thank
Yes.
you so much. I really appreciate it. This
yeah.
is just a clarifying question about a candidate who is only getting a TK credential. So the candidate is only getting a TK credential, and let's say that they are working in a TK classroom and in a second grade classroom for their 2 placements.
So they're in a
Mhm.
PK-3 credential
PK
program.
They're in a PK-3
right,
credential program.
program.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Can they do either cycle in either classroom?
Yes.
Yeah.
And they could be in different classrooms or in the same, correct?
So yeah, the cycles are not connected. So if you are in a PK-3
Right.
program and you have a candidate in a TK class for one and a second grade class for the other, they can do one cycle in one cycle
Okay.
in the other.
Okay,
And so yeah,
but both cycles need to be completed with children ages 4 and up.
I
For
believe the math performance
PK-3,
assessment, I think you can work younger than 4,
you
right?
can work. Yeah, you could work with some older 3s.
Okay, thank you
In a
so
PK setting.
much.
And I just wanted to call out because I didn't realize I can't see the chat as I'm presenting because I'm recording and I have my computer screens
Yes.
are full. But I wanted to point out in the PK-3, just like I pointed this out in the beginning, as you get to the overview for PK-3 ECE, they are required to provide math instruction to children preschool through grade 3, excuse me, through grade 3. So again, like you were saying, can they be in a TK setting while they do the math cycle? Absolutely. Could they be in a third grade classroom? Absolutely. This gives you that range of what is acceptable for their clinical placement.
And
They are
you'll see
teaching a
this,
group of 3 or more children,
yeah.
and and within that, they're selecting those 3 focused children for whom they'll adapt. So
And you'll
yeah,
see this
sorry, Marissa,
page
go
in the
ahead.
LPA as well. And
Yeah.
the big thing, we did this page for version 1 for all the ed
Mhm.
sped areas. And then we're like, why don't we do this page for
Helpful.
the general education and other areas
Yeah.
as well to avoid some of this confusion? And so it's right there in
Yeah.
the overview of the ages. And like I said, Andrea asked that question about those older preschool students. And I personally kept my child in preschool when he could have gone to TK because I thought it was a more supportive environment because of his language issues that he has definitely grown out of. So, but truly, it's really going to be a matter of where that candidate is placed, what cycle your program is supporting them with, but there are the parameters for the ages listed in each one of the assessment guides in the overview.
Yes.
And yeah, are there
Okay.
any other
Maybe
questions that we didn't necessarily address in the chat that anybody would like to bring up before?
Yeah.
Because half the performance assessment for math is that
Step one
planning
is
step.
step
So
one.
yeah.
We're halfway through. So this is the time if you have any questions about planning or if anything wasn't clear that I mentioned in the rubrics. Okay. All right. Well, I'm here. Don't worry. We got time too. All right. Yeah. And Marissa and I intentionally added those sections about clinical placement because we saw and heard from so many that they were not sure if they were in the right clinical placement setting. So we just wanted to give that clarity and that overview and flexibility so that you, the program, and candidates could see, are they in the right kind of setting for completing either the math or literacy cycle?
I do
Okay.
see a hand up, but I answered it.
Oh, okay.
Shamshed?
Yes, so this assessment needs to be performed while you are a part of credentials, or it can be done before.
So,
It should be intentionally embedded into a program and supported by faculty, by cooperating teachers while in a clinical practice placement.
Got it.
So
And
it is intended to be done as part of coursework and clinical practice.
right.
they, like as a TK, it can be done in preschool setting as well, as long as they're 4.
So that overview page, there is a difference for the math performance assessment. I
Let me
believe
go
you
back.
can work with maybe some of the younger children in preschool setting, but for the literacy performance assessment, we are asking for TK aged children. And we recognize with universal TK the age ranges and the overlapping classes. So that's why we said TK aged rather than TK, because we do recognize that there can be overlap there.
Got it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for clarification.
Yeah. And it's also here in the guide. So if you have questions about that, that's intentionally, that's why we added this section for PK-3 and for multiple subjects.
Can we
So
have
that
the
they
link for
know.
this guide, please?
I'm sorry, what?
Link for this guide.
I'll put the
Yeah, we have a resource folder. Yeah.
It's also available on the website. If you go into the CTC resources, all of the guides and templates are available without passwords.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. I see another hand up.
It's Elise, I think.
Elise, hi.
Hi, sorry. Thank you for this. I love the deep dive. I just was trying to differentiate between focus student 1, 2, and 3. And so for focus student 2, you mentioned one of the differentiations is the multisensory strategies.
Yes.
Right, under
Let me go back to that area. For focus student 2, you mentioned?
correct.
Yeah, these are just like the same as last year, except
Yes.
for those additional level 4s areas.
Yes. So I love how you're consistent with the with the verbiage throughout to differentiate that. Thank you. That's an excellent support. My question though comes then as we're connecting then to the rubric 1.3. Is the multisensory only in level 4 for the for that student? Or do they, because I don't see it in level 3.
Yeah, so let me go to 1.3. That's focus student 3. Right. So the last construct would be that their planned adaptation or adaptations clearly support their math learning need or needs. So
Okay, so
again,
that's the goal. Okay.
that is the goal. How are those adaptations that you are planning to do and use with that focus student, how are they going to support their math learning need or needs? And then it brings it up to a 4 if they're able to incorporate how they're going to use those planned adaptations to help the focus student participate in the lesson by using 2 or more multisensory strategies.
Okay, so you're kind of setting them up for success by putting it as a bullet here. Is that the
It
idea?
that
Like
is
shoot for the
that is the
stars
idea.
or
That is the idea.
okay.
The
Okay,
idea
perfect.
is to really prompt them up well as they are differentiating, their adaptations for this for each of the 3 focus student or children. But again, we haven't ever done it this way before. We haven't
Yeah,
done it this way before. So this is a bit
Okay.
of a change, bit of
I
a
love it. I
I
love
love
it.
it too.
Yeah, I
yeah,
think it's great.
it's
I think it's
And
great.
it's prompting them up for success. So again, it's something that hopefully they're going to see and utilize and go, oh, well, okay, now, yeah, I could pull in 2 or more multisensory strategies to support this particular focus student or child.
Hmm. Hmm.
And great. And if they do and they provide clear evidence of how they're planning to do that, awesome. They're going to get, if they meet all of 3 and they also have that multisensory strategy plan, great. Then they would move up to a 4 as well. And
Beautiful.
maybe then they'd
Okay.
move up to a 5. So
Even better. Even
again,
better. Okay, awesome.
I really took time to really go over the rubrics and how they connect to the templates
Yeah, oh,
for
for sure.
Heartbeat because of this change this year.
Yeah.
And let's see how it goes because, candidates typically do really well on rubrics 1.2, 3, and 4 around focus students.
Yeah, we saw that in the data. Yeah,
Yeah,
for
they
sure.
usually
For
do
sure.
pretty well on that. Maybe not for all 3, but for 2 or more. But I think it's a great way to kind of really kind of prompt them up for like, hey, okay, now take it the step further
Yeah,
and
here's the
incorporate
carrot.
these. Yeah, here's the
Awesome.
carrot. Take it.
Okay, I love
There
it.
it
Thank
is.
you for the
Yeah,
clarification. I appreciate it.
yeah. And earlier the suggestion about offering some kind of hypotheticals maybe or more clear guidance around evidence-based practice and research. I think that's great. And we'll look into some resources.
Like they've been doing it in all their credential classes, so I think
Yeah.
it's fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
Thank you.
Good.
Yeah,
Super.
one thing to mention about the levels 4 and 5 for both the MPA, LPA, cycle 1, cycle 2. What we did, you'll notice they're different constructs. And what we did was take a look at a level 3 and say, how do we do a level 3 more? How do we do a level 3 much more? And that's where your 4 and that's where your 5 is because there were things that were in a level 4 or a level 5 construct that were not asked for in templates or not and we were thinking, oh, do we add an extra prompt or something like that? But then someone would might answer that and then they didn't meet a level 3 and they get confused why they didn't get a 4, kind of thing. And so if you look at those level 3, level 4, it's how do you do that more? And so the candidate has the opportunity within the prompts in the template to answer in such a way that's more specific, right? And with more detail that would get them to that level 4 and the level 5. And you'll see that as you look at the level 3, 4 and 5 and into the LPA as well.
Yeah.
No, it's awesome. I just wanted to make sure I didn't miss the multisensory somewhere else. So I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Okay. And with that, let's move into step 2, teach and assess. Whoop, and I passed it. All right, same as last year. However, just again, group 3 or more are seen and heard. They're still selecting between 1 and 3 video clips, no more than a total of 15 minutes. So all of that is the same as version 1. Moving on, this part has changed. So part E, and I talked about this in the beginning, as they are selecting and they're videoing their whole lesson, and now they're going out and selecting their between 1 and 3 clips. Here is what across the selected video clip or clips that they're providing, provide evidence that demonstrates you doing each of the following. So these are the 5 things across those 1 to 3 clips that we are looking for demonstration of. So remember before, you might remember in version 1, it was like select a clip of you doing this, this, and this, and that was just very different. So we took all that away and just said here, hey, here are the things that we're looking for. This directly ties into commentary as well. Let me scroll down. I'll go back up. But here are the commentary prompts. They are the exact 5 same things that we tell them to demonstrate. They're the exact same. So let me go back up to their 5 clips where they are maintaining a safe, positive learning environment. So they need to demonstrate that. They need to demonstrate how they engage with students in higher order thinking during the math lesson, or for PK-3, how they are engaging the children in play-based learning during the math lesson, how they're using a UDL-focused strategy or strategies, one or more, to support students or children during the math lesson, how they're implementing strategies to monitor student progress to support their learning, and how they are responding intentionally to support student or children learning. So they are very much aligned, and you will see why when we get to the rubrics. All right, when we get to the commentary, in the Part F commentary has been redone, this template, and for good reason. You will hopefully love it. I'll try to show it to you real quick if you have not looked at it already. So what they are doing is the commentary is where they are describing what we are seeing in the video. And not just everything. They're not just summarizing or recapping what we've already watched, because we've already watched that. They're pinpointing specific evidence of how we are looking for those 5 things that we've asked them to demonstrate. So in their commentary, any commentary that doesn't align to the video will not be considered by assessors as evidence, because we might see it in the video, but they haven't described it and the why behind it in the commentary. So we're looking for both. We're looking for the demonstration and the description. That is clear evidence. So again, as we move on to the commentary prompts, each prompt, each of these 5 prompts, candidates will have to describe what they did. So how did they maintain a safe, positive learning environment? Why they did it. So go into depth. They need to go into depth about the why behind it. And finally, the impact on student learning. So they would answer those 3 things for prompt 1 on how they're maintaining a safe, positive learning environment. Now, let me see if I can grab it real quick. If I can grab that comment. Here it is. So for multiple subjects, and it looks just similar with the small changes in the prompts, this is the Part F template, the commentary template. And you see in bold red lettering version 2, because we did have a lot of mix and match of versioning templates. So to keep all of your candidates and help them stay on track with the right template, always look for that bright red wording. So it is table format now. So they are describing how they maintained a safe, positive learning environment. If this, for example, is in video clip 2, they would call that out. They would put the timestamp directly telling us where to go and look for that. Then they would describe what they did, why they did it, and what was the impact on student learning. Now, if how they maintained a safe, positive learning environment can be found in multiple places, in multiple clips, that's fine too. All they have to do is copy this table and paste it underneath so that they can expand this particular template. So they don't have to just stay to one table. They can copy the table and put multiple tables underneath for each prompt. Okay. Let me go down to our rubrics. All right, rubric 1.5 in step 2. Candidate, you'll notice this change. This is kind of what I talked about. Candidate provides a demonstration and description of how they clearly maintain a safe, positive learning environment. Again, the demonstration is the video, the description is the commentary. So both have to align. Unfortunately, a level 2 would be an unclear demonstration and or unclear description. And a 1 would be if 1 or more was not provided. So again, just calling that out so that you're really clear with your candidates to demonstrate and describe. And you'll see that throughout the step 2 rubrics. You'll also see that in LPA as well. Next, they provide a clear demonstration and description of how they use a UDL-focused strategy or strategies, a clear demonstration and description of accurate math instruction. Again, this used to be a level 1, automatic level 1. So you'll see in level 2 that the candidate might provide a demonstration and or a description with 3 or fewer minor inaccuracies in their math content instruction. We want teachers teaching our students accurate math instruction. Now, this isn't to say that if you are teaching math and you go, oh, whoops, I gave the wrong answer there for that, whatever problem. Let me fix that real quick. And you correct it. That's not a minor inaccuracy. We've all done that as teachers. So that's not something that we're looking for. This is something that is taught to the students and that they are taught as a small inaccuracy, for example, in math content. Now, a level 1 might be that the candidate might have 4 or more minor or a major inaccuracy. A major inaccuracy is a fundamental inaccurate way that they are teaching a math concept. So fundamentally, something is inaccurate in the math instruction that is going to require students to go back and be retaught a certain math concept or lesson. So again, this used to be an automatic level 1. We've integrated it into levels 2 and 3. And then final construct, the candidate provides a clear demonstration and description of the math lesson that they described, that they planned for in step 1. A 2 would be an unclear demonstration and or description of what they described in step 1. So it's kind of like you've got some questions as you're reading it and going, well, I read about this particular plan in step 1, and now I'm seeing aspects of that in step 2, but it's still not aligning. It's not adding up. It's unclear. There's been a change. And then a level 1 might be that they do not provide a demonstration and or a description of what they planned in step 1. So things to call out. Moving up to a 4, again, if they meet all of level 3, the candidate demonstrates and describes how they use multiple UDL strategies to support their students or children. And a 5, if they meet all of level 4, they move up to a 5 to be that the candidate facilitates structured opportunities for the students to collaboratively explore math content and practice through discussion, writing, and or reading. All right, and moving on to the last rubric in Teach and Assess. Candidate provides a clear demonstration and description of how they engage the students in higher order thinking, or PK-3. This construct will say engage in play-based learning. And finally, the candidate provides a clear demonstration and a description of how they monitor and respond intentionally. If they've met that all clearly, they move up to a 4. The candidate demonstrates and describes how they use multiple assessments I don't know why that has the print as multiple being the key word there, multiple assessments to monitor and adjust in their instruction to support students or children's learning. And a 5 would be that they demonstrate and describe how they're connecting math learning to real life contexts to engage, motivate, and or extend. Okay, I can pause at the end of step 2. Please provide an example of the last level 3 construct in levels 1.5. The last one in level 5. It's really hard for these to for us to like go into examples or hypotheticals in these types of deep dives because we're so limited to time and I've only got about 11 minutes left. So I think that these are questions I think that we could come back to. And again, resource based.
Real quick, are we talking about they teach the lesson they planned? Is that the one we're looking at?
No, she said level 3?
A level 3 and 1.5. Ruth,
provides a clear I thought you were talking about level 5. Excuse me. Provides a clear demonstration and or description of the math lesson described in step 1.
Yeah. So what basically the candidate needs to plan the lesson that they teach. We've seen folks that plan something and then teach something completely different. And so that's what that construct is about. Now, Ruth, go ahead. I know you have your hand up.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
That kind of answered.
It's
Okay.
kind of like they planned, I'm going to teach them how to add 2-digit numbers, and then the lesson is division of 3-digit numbers. That's what that is.
We
Right.
actually had someone
It,
show up in office hours very angry because they didn't pass their performance assessment. He said, nowhere in there does it say I have to plan a lesson, teach that lesson, and then reflect on the same lesson.
yeah.
And I was like, well, it's a cycle, man, you know?
It's a cycle.
And so it was, but it was a level one construct, automatic level one. And what we did this year, and you'll see it across the MPA and LPA, is removed all of those automatic level ones because
Yeah.
our assumption, the assumption that we teach assessors is that you need to start with every assessment like this person is going to pass. We just need to go find the evidence until proven otherwise. But
Yep.
with an automatic level one, we change that. We have to
Yeah.
start looking for the level one stuff and then go back. And so we wanted to keep the score process flow the way that it is intended to be. And so that's why we moved some of these. And so they do look a little funky where it says like they provide it unclear. So if they plan a lesson and we're like, it's not, it's
Yeah.
kind of what they planned, you know, but that's why those have been moved
Yeah.
back.
Yeah, and I apologize for my question because
Oh, no.
I didn't read the last part described in step 1. I saw that when I reviewed the materials and I went, yeah,
Yeah.
makes sense. So
We have seen it before. And I'm sorry, Ruth, I thought you were talking about level 5 too and needing examples. So I apologize.
no, that's fine. Thank you.
Yeah, we have seen candidates in PK-3 examples. I remember this one lesson, they described this beautiful lesson where they were going to count little yellow rubber duckies and they were going to read this one book and do this whole play-based activity. And then when we got to step 2 in the videos, it was all about the little red truck and something completely different. So we have seen, yeah, we want to see the cycle. We want to see what you plan for, what they plan, how they teach it, how they reflect and apply those.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I think Tammy had a question.
Oh,
real quick.
Tammy, let me look.
Yeah, you want to unmute or put in the
Question
chat?
about step 1 before we move on to LPA.
Yeah, thank you.
I can go back to
So I
step
was
1.
just looking at the template C where the focus student information has been moved there.
Uh-huh.
And kind of just thinking about processing how we usually follow the timeline that you all have suggested, where they do template A, plan their lesson, and then do C. But they need to get that information about their focus student before they plan their lesson, I'm assuming, to be leverage those assets. So is there a recommendation on how to adjust that timeline, or do you have you thought through adjusting that timeline?
We'll be working on publishing that, but I would say part A, then part C, then jump to your lesson plan for now.
Yeah.
We'll get something published.
And that might be it. And 2, in part A, where they're giving that contextual information about their group of students or children, that's a great time to start thinking about identifying those focus students at least.
Right.
And start having those conversations with their cooperating teacher and mentor about who those focus students might be. I think I'm going to select these students. Here's why. I think I want to make these adaptations because that's a lot to think through and look at available recent information about how, where they are, what their needs are, what their learning needs are. So it's kind of like that early on step. So you could almost kind of leave it in the timeline of like start thinking about the selection. And then as you start planning out your lesson, and then, then you really think through those adaptations and really identify their needs and
I
adaptations.
might have them do the beginning of part C, because I worry that they'll plan their lesson and then try to retrofit it versus plan the lesson with these focus students already in mind in a more UDL manner.
Yeah.
So that's my worry, but thank you.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's a good thing to think through, actually, and to bring up to this community for everyone to think through as we move into this new version. So that is something to think about. Yeah.
I think Jennifer has her hand up too.
Yeah, Jennifer, I can't see the hands up.
Hi.
No worries.
So I put this in the chat. there's always questions of my candidates about editing their videos. And if they can edit them, they could just send in one clip, really, because then
Correct.
they could
They
just
can.
take a lesson,
Yeah.
right? Film the home lesson, and then they can literally chop it up into where they're showing they're doing the 5 required,
Right.
because we've always said that they had to it has to be more continuous, that it can't be choppy. You can't, we always told them you could cut out parts where the students are, moving into groups and stuff, but it should be a continuous lesson. But what I'm understanding now is they can literally take their lesson, just chop it up and put it into a clip and send it in, showing that they did that in this lesson. Is that
It
true?
should be it should be continuous enough that it's not like 30 seconds of this and 5 seconds of this and 10 seconds of this. That the assessor is a teacher. They are watching this lesson and they are looking for these items. I don't recommend, more like a 30 seconds kind of thing. It's like the minimum amount if you really want to get,
Yeah.
but folks can do things different ways. Yes, they can submit one clip up to 15 minutes. Yes, they can slice it and dice it however they want, or they can submit 3 different video clips, however they want to do that editing. The only thing that we will not be scoring or permitting is speeding up videos
Oh,
to
okay.
be able to kind of, we've seen candidates do this. They're like, if I put it at 1.5 or 2.0, I can squeeze in 40 minutes into this.
Right.
No, we won't be scoring those, but yes, a candidate can edit. But just again, just make sure that they're not doing anything that's like graphics, music over things, just distracting to an assessor and annoying if it just jumps and jumps and jumps and jumps. So, but yeah, the candidates, they can edit videos going forward, and
Good.
last year as well.
Great. And I do want to say there was a helpful comment in the chat. The only problem with editing for one lesson is the potential size of the file. So I see why if they do
That-
smaller clips, it loads better. So that
That is
makes sense
true.
too.
That is true,
Thank you.
Jennifer. Yeah,
Great.
that is true. One large video file will definitely need to be compressed. So they'll have to compress that file. It'll take longer to upload. So yeah, there is that as well.
Yeah.
Um,
And there was a comment about switching B and C. We
ENC,
do
I
have,
saw that. Yeah.
yeah, we do have
Yeah,
certain limitations with ES.
we
We are
do.
CTC. ES is our contractor. They create the system, they score performance assessments, and we absolutely would love to be able to move stuff around on a regular basis, but that would probably drive a whole bunch of people nuts. It's batty enough to try to change these rubrics and such, and hopefully we will not have as many changes going into next academic year, but that was one of the kind of limitations that we do have because of the ES system of uploading. So we will be reworking those timelines based on updates to version 2. We've just been, getting version 2 out there and trying to get all the support materials, faculty resources, plan for all of these different deep dives and materials. And so we are working to get it out as soon as we possibly can,
Yeah,
as well as samples. I know there was a question
I
about
know
when
the
new
samples
samples
are
are
big
coming
one.
out. We pull samples from submissions. So we can't have a sample until we have submissions. And we haven't had our first submission date yet. And assessors are, I mean, they haven't even been trained yet
Yeah,
online, and so there's still a lot of work to do
yeah,
ahead of
exactly.
us. So yeah.
So Sharon, yes, Sharon, I see your question. Yeah, the demonstration and description of how they're meeting the ALD learning goal. Correct. That is not one of the 5 things that they're demonstrating, but it would be amazing, yes, if they're showcasing academic language and using that with their, of course, students or children. But you are correct, it is not a requirement for this particular version. And then Georgia, hi Georgia, I know Georgia. Um, Thank you for this presentation. Love to continue advocating for PK teachers, asking for the option to access foundational reading. Yes, awesome. Thank you. It'd be an honor for the abundant, rich literacy work ahead happening with PK students across the state. Yes. Okay. And with that, I think I'm going to jump to step 3 because we've got to book it. We got to book it, friends. We got to move through MPA because there's a lot of LPA to go over. All right, so reflection. Remember, I mentioned in the beginning, this is not about effectiveness. This is now about impact on their instruction, impact on the students. So that deep internal analysis of how they are doing. So the reflection prompts are basically all brand new for Math Cycle. We used really clear, plain, simple language because we want candidates really being vulnerable and thinking through how their math lesson, how it did, and the planning of their math lesson. So, so we use really plain language. So overall, what went well? Think about specific examples from step one, which is planning, and or step two, which is the teaching. So think about that. Pull that into your work. What didn't go well or as expected? Think about that. What impact did each of the following have on your teaching? And overall, did your students meet the math and ALD learning goals? And how do you know? Instead of, we used to say why not? So again, this is for the group, including the focus students or focus children, these reflection prompts, and then they get into the analysis for their focus students or focus children and the impact of those adaptations based on their learning needs for that particular focus student. Let me show you the rubric. Okay, don't panic when I show you step 3 rubric, because I think you're actually going to like it when we go through it. All right, it's a little longer than what you've seen in the past, but basically we've sectioned it out to be very clear to go through all of these things that we're asking them to reflect on the impact of. Okay, so there's no anger chats or anything right now. So let me just show you. Level 3, they're clearly reflecting on what went well and what did not go well or as expected. Because great. Hey, just like you would debrief with the candidate after observing them. Hey, tell me about it. What do you think went well? What do you think didn't go as expected? Then they reflect on the impact of getting to know their students or children before the lesson. They reflect on the impact of the safe, positive learning environment that they created. They reflect on the impact of their asset-based approach, the impact of their UDL, impact of their higher order thinking or play-based learning for PK-3. And they're clearly analyzing the students' progress on how they did in meeting the math and ALD learning goals. And they're analyzing the impact of the adaptations used to support the 3 focus students in making progress toward meeting the learning goals. So I know it looks like a lot, but when we go through it, hopefully you see how clear it is, and it's clearly walking the candidate through, thinking through each of those items that we're asking them to reflect on. And we hope that this really helps candidates reflect and really be reflectful. Boy, that's recorded. Okay. Reflect on each of those things instead of saying everything was amazing, everything I planned, and exactly how I taught the lesson went just as I planned it and thought it would go, and everything was amazing. There's really nothing to reflect on. So we want them to go a little deeper on that reflection. A level 4 is that their reflection demonstrates an understanding that affirming and validating and or leveraging the student's assets and or interests influence student math learning. And when reflecting on the impact of their instruction, the candidate refers to specific examples from the teaching of their math lesson to determine which strategy or strategies move the learning forward. And again, we kind of prompt them up for levels 4 and 5 by telling them, hey, think about some things. Think about, pull that into your work. And how do you know? So that is step 3, reflect. I'm excited about that and about these changes. And then step 4, as they apply, moving forward, they're thinking about the group, describing what they learned throughout the cycle, what went well, using specific examples, not referring to evidence, specific examples to justify their next move, their next instructional move for math learning. And then again, for the group, think about what you would teach to this group of students or children to advance their math and ALD, and use a specific example. And finally, for the focus students, they're thinking about support. Now, the rubric, level 3, their application of next steps clearly describes what they learned throughout the cycle. Their application of next steps clearly describes how they would advance the math and the academic language learning development for the group. Application of next steps clearly describes how they would continue to support the learning needs of the 3 focus students or children. And finally, that they use a specific example or examples from steps 1, 2, or 3 that clearly justifies their next instructional move for math learning. Okay? They can provide more than one example, but one clear specific example from their planning, their teaching, or their reflection is fine. And that meets the construct for a level 3. Again, if they meet all of that, that their responses demonstrate how they will continue to leverage assets and or interest for future in future lessons, and that the candidate demonstrates how they will apply what they have learned about the group and the focus students to plan future instruction that clearly reinforces, strengthens, and or extends their higher order thinking or play base for PK related to math and academic language. I went 6 minutes over, but hopefully you noticed the changes from version 1 to version 2 are clear to you. You see that the changes in levels 4 and 5. You see the focus student information and how we do sort of prompt them up for a 4 and 5, but again, they need to meet the 3 first. You'll see that the word impact is heavily used in step 3, where they are reflecting on the impact of the things that they planned and taught. And again, we're not saying refer to evidence, we're saying tell us about a specific example or example. So hopefully those are helpful. Ruth, I see your hand up.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm being nitpicky.
Yes, please. Okay.
Page 35 of the assessment guide says it at the note, it says the commentary could be up to 5 minutes.
Right.
Yeah. And then if you go down to H at the what to submit, it says 6 minutes.
It sure does. Oh my goodness.
Sorry.
I don't know how many eyes have seen this and didn't catch that, Ruth. We're going to send these to you. That's a great catch. We'll have to publish something about that because we don't want that unclear to candidates.
And the evidence tables or the how to submit, it says 6 as well.
It says 6.
And I just tell my students,
right here.
Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah.
I mean, we all do that.
I mean, 30 sets of eyes have probably seen this and didn't catch that.
And I apologize for pointing it out, but
no, absolutely. I'm glad you pointed it out. The evidence table says how many minutes? I'm sorry, 5?
6.
The evidence table says 6?
Yeah.
Then it's 6 minutes. And I'm going back here to our the beginning chapter about specifications.
Yep.
And it says video up to 6 minutes. So not 5 minutes. If they do a video response, it can be 6 minutes. So here it is.
And that verbal response, it says video. Could it be an audio, or do you really want to see this candidate's face talking about these things?
Yeah, so we really want that video response where they are just authentically just turn on the camera and chat with us and talk.
Okay.
That's what we're looking for in a video, just a natural, authentic way that they're answering those prompts. And again, if that is a better way of communication for a candidate, then they absolutely have that option, and it can be up to 6 minutes.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Ruth. Okay, other questions before we move into a break? Okay, Marissa, I'm going to pass it to you in a minute. So how long do you want to let them go for? And before we move into LPA?
Let's take 5, stand up, stretch, and then come back at 10:45. Maybe that's, yeah. Perfect. Is that okay? All right.
Okay. You can go ahead and mute and turn off your video for
10:45.
I restarted the recording.
Perfect, perfect. All right, now we're going to be talking about the literacy performance assessment. And thank you, Julie, for all of those questions that were answered.
Yeah.
They are all going to get carried on over to the literacy performance assessment, so it should make going through that document a little bit easier. If we could pull up the PowerPoint, and we'll talk about some of the main shifts in version 2. And then we'll get into the guide.
All right, and just give me a second as I get organized here. Okay. Moving into LPA.
Okay, so like we said in the MPA and looking at the multiple subjects in the PK-3 ECE specialist credential, they are absolutely overlapping credentials. They authorize for very similar grade levels, except PK-3 is third grade is where they stop. Multiple subjects goes up to 12th grade. So a lot of what you see in the PK-3 ECE specialist TPA, as well as the multiple subjects TPA, are going to be very similar. Like Julie was pointing out, we will be going through the multiple subjects version. I will be speaking to when there is a shift for PK-3, but some of the major changes is the learning segment template has been renamed. It is now a unit plan. Okay. The unit plan consists of a scope and sequence, 3 lessons or activity plans, no more 3 to 5, so just 3. And there's a 20-page limit total for the template. So if the candidate has a scope and sequence that's 7 pages, and then lesson plan 1 is 3 pages, and lesson plan 2 is 7 pages, where are we at? 17 now. And then the last lesson is 3 pages, they're within their 20 pages. So there's no page limit for each individual lesson. It's just a page limit for the whole template. Okay. The template no longer includes tables. So last version 1, the tables, like they didn't go across pages sometimes. And so there'd be a page with like a big amount of blank space, and then the next page, and then it was causing assessors issues, because then they're trying to figure out if the candidate was within their page limit. They take up a lot of real estate. Any prompts that the candidate wasn't necessarily addressing still took up more space. So they are now back. We are putting them in prompts. Another major shift for this unit, and also to help with candidates developing lessons that align, that build upon, and develop that progression of learning, is candidates will identify the strands or standards for the unit. And then they will develop unit goals based on those strands and standards. And the unit goal is what will be measured in the summative assessment. So, for example, a candidate is working with 3rd graders, and they are writing, or 2nd graders, they're writing an opinion piece, and maybe they're doing a taste test of different fruits, and they're going to talk about which one is their favorite. And so the end game is that their summative assessment is that they are going to have this opinion paragraph or multi-paragraph, depending upon the goal of the teacher, and they're going to do an art project about this fruit. Maybe they're going to integrate some fine arts in there too. So the goals for the unit will be that they're able to complete this summative assessment. And the lessons, the 3 lessons, are going to be what are going to build towards that summative assessment. The summative assessment is no longer in the 3rd lesson. It's done outside of the 3rd lesson. So we should see lesson 1, lesson 2, lesson 3, or activity 1, activity 2, activity 3, building towards this summative assessment. Right? That's how we're going to see that progression of learning. The candidate does not have to cite standards in each lesson. They cite them once at the beginning. They will then develop goals. Candidates will have goals for ELA literacy and ELD. The 3 major components of those goals are going to be foundational reading skills, their additional theme or themes. They may have more than one. I don't often recommend that for folks because it can get a little bit challenging, especially for an emergent teacher, right? And their English language development. Their English language development needs to support those foundational reading skills and that additional theme. So there are three best friends. They go walking together always. ELA literacy, composed of foundational reading skills and additional theme, and ELD. Now, the template names have shifted a bit. So the candidate is now, because it's assessment-driven instruction, that's assessment-driven literacy instruction. The candidate is now asked to plan for a formative assessment in each lesson. Now, so that template that was the formative and summative assessment, that was, I believe, template C, is now just describing the summative assessment. There will be a prompt in each lesson asking the candidate for a formative assessment. To get to a level 4, right, level 4 and 5, they should have multiple formative assessments, varied formative assessments. That's what we're looking for, but one in each lesson. Then the candidate will, again, like I said, just use those assessments to drive their instruction. But again, in the planning stages, they don't know what's going to come up. They're not sure. So but the end game is that summative assessment. They're building goals for the unit that get them to that summative assessment. They're using information and assessment data, observations, whatever they have to plan the unit. And it's 3 lessons. Now, the question also, do they have to be 3 days right in a row? Well, maybe a lesson might take 2 days to get through, depending upon the literacy block that the candidate has to work with. So that is going to all be up to the candidate and some flexibility in there. But my suggestion is that they let the camera roll. They record everything, because maybe what they plan for as a way to demonstrate their ELA literacy ELD component, maybe that wasn't the best sample. Another sample came up in a different lesson, and they only need one solid example for each of the rubric constructs, but they can have more than one. And I do recognize, as I was looking at the templates, it doesn't say on the template that they can copy and paste the table when they get into that template, but they can. And so that'll be some instructions that we'll be working. But like I said, there were a lot of shifts and changes, and we're catching these like little bitty things, and it's just they end up becoming big things though. But the step 3, it does have a page limit right now, or sorry, step part D has a page limit of 3 pages. But if a candidate, we're still having a conversation about that. If a candidate has a multi-page, summative assessment and their rubric or performance criteria, we're having a conversation, and we will keep you updated as to how we're going to instruct assessors, just to look at the whole thing. As long as it's just this is the major parameters for right now. All right, we can take a look, and I know that's a lot, so it's a big shift, but we're planning a unit. It's driven by assessments. There's assessments built in, and there's assessment at the end. You can hit the next slide, please. The video clips. So the video clips in version 1 were slightly different. In version 2, video clip 1, and again, like we said in last in the MPA, the candidate can have one big long video. They can clip and edit things together, or they can say, if you're like me, 4 video clips, 4 emphasis areas, that's what I would probably do. But foundational reading skills in 1, additional theme in the other, integrated ELD in the 3rd clip, and assessment of literacy. And that's what we are going to be looking for, and that's what rubric constructs are going to align to. So these are the 4 emphasis areas. And again, that commentary is now aligned by prompt, not clip. And we are asking for candidates to, really get to what they did briefly, because we can totally see that in the video, why they did it, and the impact that it had. And the why and the impact, that's the description. That's what we're looking for. All right. Next slide, please. The part I prompt for analyzing the class and the focus students' child work, the table has been brought back from version 7, but it's very specific that we're looking at the summative assessment results because I know that there was confusion in version 7. What goals are we talking about? Lesson goals, the goals, it's the goals for the unit. So it's a visualization space for the candidate to look at how students did on the summative assessment. And because of the table, we have increased the page limit on that prompt, on that template from 4 pages to 7. And we can go to the last slide here. And there haven't been very many updates for step 4. The candidate can continue to record with just the focus student or the focus student and others who need similar support. If they choose to film with 1 student, fine. 2 students, great. 3 students, fine. The whole class, fine. But the whole thing has to be planned intentionally for the focus student. So any combination of 1 and more students is fine so long as they're planning intentionally to address the learning needs of the focus student. All right. Kim.
Sorry, on the previous slide, do they need to do 4 video clips or they can still choose 1 to 4 clips?
Yep. But those are the 4 emphasis areas that we'll be looking for.
Okay, but they can choose to do 4 clips.
Yes.
I'm sorry. They can choose to do 1 big clip and include
any
all
combination
4
of 1 to 4 clips up to 20 minutes.
Okay, thank you.
Tyler?
Yeah, I just had a question about the video clips. So the clips can be edited, right? For the LPA?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And they're doing 3 lessons in when they like, so you know how you mentioned like if they submit 4 video clips and you kind of mentioned like showing the video clips of each thing that's listed there. I don't know if I'm making sense, but my question is if they're editing the clips and they're doing 3 lessons, could they have a combination of the different lessons within each clip showing those points that they're being assessed on?
So we don't necessarily need like a highlights reel of every time that they did one thing or another. One solid piece of evidence is enough. And so, you know, that we don't want, candidates are not required to edit. They're not required to do foundation. If they do foundational reading skills in all 3 lessons, they're not required to pull the foundational reading skills in lesson 1, lesson 2, lesson 3, edit them together and do a commentary for each one. They're not required to do that. They can give one solid example of foundational reading skills, one solid example of the additional theme, one solid example of ELD, one solid example of their monitoring and responding intentionally. They're not required to create any kind of highlights reel or anything like that. They can if they'd like to, but again, not a requirement. And so, and again, the big thing about editing is there's no requirement for it. They can give us a continuous unedited video of them engaging, you know, 1 clip of them doing ELD, for example. So it can be a challenge for some folks that don't have that ed tech, you know, knowledge about being able to edit videos. So it's an option, but it's not a requirement. And in their lessons, they are still able to plan 1 lesson that works on foundational reading skills, and then the other 2 on the additional theme, or embed foundational reading skills and the additional theme on all 3 lessons. So they still have that option as well.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, and the quick question about, so version 1 to version 2. Candidates can submit what they completed for version 1, but they are going to be scored using version 2 rubrics. So whatever they need to do to adjust to version 2 rubrics, that's what they'll need to do. And that will be a conversation between faculty and candidates. And so it's really, I mean, much of what is in the literacy performance assessment is, if not the same, similar, it's just a slightly different format, and we're looking for something a little different when we are looking at some of these video clips. But Again, that'll be just a conversation that you'll have to have, but know that candidates who submitted after the last submission date in July, which I believe was July 2nd at 11:59 p.m., they are sitting in a queue waiting for the next score date, and they will be scored according to version 2 rubrics. Okay. All right, if we could scroll down a little bit, Julie. Thank you for doing this. We really appreciate it. You've been on point today. We can keep going. Maybe we'll get down to that real quick page with the overview where it talks about, we can keep past this because this is all the same. Right here, overview of performance assessment cycles. We put this in every one of the assessment guides. TK in grades TK and above, TK age and above. So if you do have candidates that are working in a preschool with TK age students, they can use that placement. TK age and above. We are giving that instruction to all of our assessors. So it's TK age and above. Okay. Group of 3 or more students. A group is not defined as 2 or more anymore. A group is 3 or more. It's the same from MPA to LPA. And the candidate should select a focused child or student whom they will intentionally adapt their instruction for. So in step 1, they are asked to describe recent available learning and relevant contextual information for the 3 students and the focus students, and about that they're planning to teach. They're going to leverage those assets interests. Again, that cultural and linguistic was never intended to be an exclusive list of assets or interests. So as you continue to work with candidates, talk to them about different assets, talk to them about different interests and how they can use that, leverage that to teach the new information. Again, 3 lessons, not 3 to 5, 3 lessons, and corresponding assessments. There will be formative assessments in each lesson and a summative assessment at the end. So there are corresponding assessments. They align and build upon one another. I know that those are synonyms. I apologize. I say things over and over again, but it's very true that they need to align, they need to go together, and they need to build upon each other. So I do recognize those are synonyms, but and they are going to be addressing those grade level standards. So whether they are in the PTKLF or they are in Common Core state standards, they need to address those standards, and standards are going to be listed in the scope and sequence, then used to develop goals for the unit, and then used to develop sub-goals for the unit in each of the lessons. The candidate must teach and assess foundational reading skills, an additional theme, and integrated ELD. This is part of SB 488. This is in legislation. This assessment is taking the place of what was RECA and combining Cycle 2 and RECA together to meet that literacy requirement. So a candidate must teach foundational reading skills, they must teach an additional theme, and they must integrate ELD. If you think that candidates know what foundational reading skills are, ask them again, teach it again. We really need to see foundational reading skills. And it was interesting. I had a conversation with a candidate who was moving from version 1 to version 2. And I was talking about, okay, well, your foundational reading skill, your additional theme, and your ELD. And she goes, is that new? Because I thought we just did foundational reading skills. I'm like, yeah, it's not new. Probably a good thing you're resubmitting because you have to do the additional theme. So absolutely. Those are the 3 major components, and supporting candidates and understanding the differences between them and where they are and what they are is going to be a key element of the literacy performance assessment. Then the candidate is asked to teach the planned unit to their group of students, and they are asked to discuss and demonstrate how they actively engage students in effective literacy instruction, how they provide instruction in the additional theme, how they integrate ELD and to support the additional theme and the foundational reading skills, and how they use formative assessments to monitor student progress and respond intentionally. Yes, Ruth.
So it says somewhere, where does it say? Teach and video record all lessons and assessments, and then it says formative and summative. My best understanding of that is you're not recording a paper pencil test or
Correct.
kids writing a paragraph. It's only recording summative assessments if it's a presentation kind of thing.
Correct, absolutely, and this is an important issue. Thank you for raising the question. In step 3, the candidate is asked to submit the summative assessment, and in last year we were accepting assessments that did not include that. We were allowing for people to submit rubrics with details, things of that nature. We will no longer be accepting that this year. The candidate must submit a complete submission in their e-portfolio. And so that's why we put this piece of instruction in there. Obviously, if it's a product, it would be a pretty boring video, right? If they're especially a multiple choice question or essay thing. But the candidate can always record all lessons, assessments, different components, because something may come up. And sometimes candidates have and this is a question that has come up, especially in the early ed side, where maybe there's a multifaceted assessment where there's parts that are recorded and then parts that are written. The candidate could absolutely submit a video of the recording, and then maybe when they submit the rubric with the rubric specific feedback, they could submit a written component in that space, so we're able to see both. But it can be a challenge, especially for those multifaceted assessments, and discuss that with the candidates as they're making this plan as to what the rubric will be based on, or and if they submit one part, let's say they only submit the product and there's a component on the rubric for the verbal, that'll be fine, as long as we have the vast majority and are able to look at this assessment and see if the results that the candidate is discussing in step 3 make sense. Because if they say, all my focus student did a fantastic job and they missed every single thing on that assessment, we're like, oh, that's not necessarily true. And then they do an extend activity and move on, and then everything's incorrect there too. That's why we need to see it. So, okay. So there's a question about the additional theme. So Bev, if you want to unmute real quick, I just want to make sure I understand your question.
Sorry about that.
No worries.
Last year when we were working with the different, foundational reading skills, especially when we were working with teachers in upper grades and middle school, high school, and they were, choosing a foundational reading skill. For some reason or other, most people were getting really confused about how to show that and to show the additional theme in the same lessons. In other words, they were melded together, but when they went to go write the explanation about it, they weren't exactly sure how to do that. So I'm just wondering if you have an example of like, I don't know. Maybe I'm not making myself very clear. I just know that last year, I don't know if anyone else ran into this problem, but last year it was an issue for some.
Well, I mean, off the top of my head, something that I could think of is like, let's say the candidate is working with a student on, and especially with the younger kids, maybe phonics, and then they take the words that they're working on and then they put them into some kind of a story, and they do like a vocabulary or meaning making activity. With older students, perhaps they are working with the students on Greek and Latin root words, and then they take that and take an article with some very Latin-based roots or Greek-based roots, and taking that information and highlighting that root, and then taking the contextual clues around that word and trying to figure out what those words mean in context with their knowledge of, like I said, contextual cues and the Greek and Latin root words. Something like that.
So that would be adding making meaning to
the foundational reading skill of that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's what I was giving them, examples of, but for some reason or other, it was just one of those areas that was not very clear to them. So
no, it's a
thank you.
challenge for in-practice teachers. This is a lot of different ways that we're doing this instruction, and so that's why it is so key, the literacy components of your program that are going to hold this up. And we've gotten questions before, can a candidate do this outside of program? I mean, they could do just about anything. It's just not recommended, because without, the teacher I was when I was 21, given my first special ed classroom, is very different than the person sitting in front of you today, and the knowledge and skills and things that I have acquired. And so that's where you sit in that space of supporting these folks. That's where their cooperating teachers sit in the space of supporting these folks. And when I mean, just giving you a quick example off the top of my head, you're like, oh yeah, that's exactly what we're doing. But for sometimes folks, they just need to have that give and take conversation. So,
okay, thank you.
No problem. Kim, I see your hand up.
Hi, I just had a quick question about the foundational skills. If a student is in 6th grade, are we still directing them towards the L language standards of the ELA standards to pull for quote unquote foundational skills?
Yeah, and the white paper, and maybe Julie or Patricia, I'm not sure, or we could pop that in the chat a little bit later, where it lists some different foundational reading skills for by grade level. But again, our multiple subjects assessors are extremely sensitive to the fact that foundational reading skill standards stop at 5th grade, or and so anybody teaching above that, it will be a challenge. So there will not be, like, if a candidate lists a foundational reading skill that goes with that white paper that's around fluency or Greek and Latin root words, and the standards for a different grade level or something of that, they're not going to condition code it. It's not going to score an automatic 1. Those are not things that are going to happen, because we do recognize that there are limitations within the standards for candidates. But developing a foundational reading skill goal for the unit that the candidate is going to work with, that's on grade level according to that white paper, that's what we're going to be looking for going forward.
Okay, and did you say that paper was in the chat, or?
We'll get it in there. I think Julie's sharing screen, and there's a lot of different things going, but we'll definitely get that in there.
I'm looking for it.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Thank you.
And Lori's quick question, the summative assessment must be recorded. It doesn't have to be recorded if they are doing a product-based piece, but a performance-based, a process, they'll have to upload their summative assessment. So it's important to emphasize to those candidates, because we get folks in office hours every week. I didn't know I had to record it. I didn't, what do I do? And then they have to like go back and redo it, and that's not authentic and not good. So it's just better to let folks know, let the camera roll, save those videos in a nice secure place, and delete what you don't need, right? But it's better to have it. It's just like when you're going on a day trip to the beach and you're like, do I really need my sweater and my hat? It's better to take them, even if you don't need it, because you can always leave it behind. But if you need it, it's a sad day when you need a sweater and it's cold, and yeah. Okay, so always let those cameras roll, record, and delete what you don't need. Product-based, if they already know, like you're working with a candidate who's teaching a self-contained 8th grade class, and they're going to have students do the multiple choice assessment with a free response, and that's what they're using their rubric to score. They don't need to record a bunch of kids typing on a computer or writing. Like, I mean, that's not what they're going to upload. But just making sure that candidates understand that this is a component, because what another thing that would happen to candidates was they would fall down and forget to record that follow-up instruction. And then they have to come back 6 weeks later and try to record follow-up instruction. It's not authentic. It's not gonna work. So just front-loading them with what they need to do. But okay, let's go ahead and keep moving because we're running out of time. And okay, so step 3, reflect. That's where the candidate is going to go through and score the summative assessment, provide the focus student with a specific actionable feedback, and analyze and reflect upon the results. Now, you'll notice there was a requirement for specific actionable feedback to be done in step 2 and then again in step 3. That has been removed. All specific actionable feedback is now in step 3, and that is an important distinction. Then step 4, not much has been updated. This is the place where the candidate is using all of the evidence to say what are our next steps, and whether with that focus student, what are we going to do next for this focus student to either move them forward with an extension or remediate and move them forward with a reteach. So it just depending upon the results of that summative assessment and what they learned about the student during the teaching. All right, let's keep on rolling. We'll talk about essential questions when we get to the rubrics. This whole section that, oh, well, we can stay here for just a second, but that whole section of the, like how things are scored is in the front of the LPA as well. So you'll notice part A, contextual information, B, unit plan, C, summative assessment, and D, copies of the blank assessment and rubric or performance criteria. It's outlined here in what the candidate will need to do. I'm going through this quickly because I want to make sure we have time for rubrics. So let's go ahead and scroll down to step 2 and 3. This is where the candidate is doing that video clip. And again, 1 to 4 clips, any way they want to slice and dice them, 1 edited video, however the candidate wants to do it. And their commentary. And the commentary is in the same format as the written commentary that we showed you for MPA. Step 3, reflect. And that's that part G, the student summative assessment response and scored rubric or performance criteria. Again, candidates were not recording that summative assessment and they were not able to upload that part G. That was a big thing last year, and we will no longer accept it. It will get a condition code for incomplete. So please make sure that the candidate does record their summative assessment if it's a process or a presentation. If it's a product, right, they would just upload the product. But please make sure they understand that component. Then their feedback, if they do video or audio, up to 5 minutes, or it could be written, however they want to do that. And then they will also have an opportunity in part I to reflect on that feedback. Then step 4, video, follow-up activity plan, follow-up video, and follow-up commentary. All right. Okay. Great. So again, unit plan, it's made up of 3 lessons and corresponding formative and summative assessments. It's what we're going to teach, what we're going to do. And the candidate is still going to go through that process of getting to know their students. If they're in the same clinical practice placement that they did their math performance assessment in, they can use a lot of that same information as they move over. But in the biggest shift is that they only have 1 focus student in the LPA as opposed to 3. We can go ahead and scroll down. Video clips are all the same as last year, so hopefully those were helpful. The shift here is around the assets and interests, and then there is a question about in the chat about SLD standards. Yes, the candidate is able to use SLD standards if they're in a bilingual in Spanish class. We do not have any other language standards for any other language at this time because we are waiting for those to come from the CDE. And because we don't have that, the only language is Spanish at this time. We can scroll down, taking a look at the focus student. The characteristics of the focus student are the same from last year. An English learner, keep scrolling down. Identified literacy disability. They may benefit from support with making progress to the ELA literacy standards, or they have gaps in knowledge or misconceptions around foundational reading skills. And so the candidate will then provide the focus students information in addition to the information for the group. And we can go ahead and scroll down. So the unit plan, we can go ahead and scroll down to the next page here. So again, foundational reading skills, the additional theme, and ELD. Those are the major themes. Those are things we must see. And without any one of these components, it is mathematically impossible for a candidate to pass the LPA. They are in every single rubric. So a candidate must include foundational reading skills, the additional theme, and ELD. Maria.
Yes, so that's part of my question in the chat regarding a dual immersion. Do they still have to do an ELD standard goal, or do they do the Spanish language development goal?
Spanish language development goal.
Okay. All right, thank you.
You're welcome. So as we can go ahead and scroll down. So the unit scope and sequence, like I was describing earlier, they will describe how they are using their previous literacy instruction. They're going to select one or more ELA literacy strand or standard, or if they're in that bilingual classroom, they will select the Common Core in Espanol. Then they will use that standard to develop either one ELA literacy goal that includes both foundational reading skills and the additional theme, or they can create a goal for the foundational reading skills and then a separate one for the additional theme. Candidate's choice, but their goals for the unit needs to include both ELA, literacy, foundational reading skills, and an additional theme. We don't tell them what additional theme they should select. That is candidate choice. Now we can go ahead and scroll down. Now, the next thing that they will do is select one or more grade level appropriate ELD strand or standard that amplifies and supports those ELA literacy strand standards that they selected. And they will develop an ELD goal that aligns with and supports that ELA literacy. And again, for a Spanish language development SLD standard. Then they will identify and describe the foundational reading skill that they will learn in either one lesson or across multiple lessons in the unit. We had issues with this last year where a candidate said, this is the foundational reading skill I'm doing, and then they go on to describe another foundational reading skill. We want to make sure assessors will give them credit for if they call it one thing and it's really something else, they will give them credit for that. But we wanted to make this a specific call out to support faculty when they, to at a glance, take a look at the scope and sequence and make sure that folks are on the right track and that they understand what this foundational reading skill really is. So if they say my foundational reading skill is writing a 3-paragraph essay, right? That we need to work with that candidate. And so it's a way to at a glance make sure that they're setting themselves up for success. Then they will also summarize their 3 planned lessons. That does not need to be an exhaustive bullet point. They're going to go in and do their lessons. They're going to do their activity plans. But just a quick, what is this lesson about? What is this lesson about? What is this lesson about? Kind of thing. So opinion paper. I'm going to, first lesson is going to be about taking a stance and saying which fruit is my favorite. I like grapes, watermelon, or apples, and taking that stance. And then their second lesson is going to be about transitional phrases and giving reasons. And then maybe your third paragraph is concluding, depending upon the age of the students, maybe they're going to talk about counter arguments. Maybe some people like apples, but apples are not as good as grapes. Whatever it is that the student is going to do. But those are the 3 lessons that are going to lead to that summative assessment. And that's how they're going to summarize. The summative assessment will measure the identified ELA literacy and ELD goals for the unit. So how are those goals being measured in that summative assessment? Then for each lesson, the candidate is going to include an ELA literacy goal based on those ELD literacy goals for the unit. So the unit is the thing we're going to do. The lessons or the activities is the way we're going to get there. So we're going to break that unit goal down into these 3 pieces to get to the end. Then they will include an ELD goal for the unit. And in all of these, if you have a candidate that's completing this in a dual immersion program in Spanish, we didn't want to take up the real estate on the template where it says that section under each template. But if they are working with Common Core en Español and SLD, that's what they're putting here. So we just really didn't want to, because that was a major thing on the rubric or on the template before. Then the candidate will summarize their lesson activity, describing how they plan to address that foundational reading skill. It says, if applicable. If the candidate does one lesson with foundational reading skills and then the other are just in the additional theme, they will put non-applicable, right? If they're going to actively engage students in the additional theme, if applicable. Again, if that whole lesson's about foundational reading skills, they'll put non-applicable about the additional theme. And then they're going to integrate ELD to support foundational reading skills, if applicable, and the additional theme, if applicable. If the whole lesson's about foundational reading skills, then the ELD will support foundational reading skills. If the whole lesson's about the additional theme, then the ELD will support the additional theme. If they choose to do all three lessons, foundational reading skills and the additional theme, then the ELD will support both in that lesson. Then they will describe UDL strategies they plan to use, how they plan to actively engage students. And for PK-3, this is where they will talk about some of that play-based pieces, how they plan to leverage their assets and interests, and the formative assessment they plan to use to monitor student learning. This prompt is given to the candidates 3 times. They are to have 3 formative assessments throughout their lessons. 1 in each lesson at least. If they want to shoot for the stars, 2 or more. We ask a lot of formative assessments even in this webinar, checking for understanding. And so it's something that candidates need to really think about. And I remember working with teacher candidates, and I was a librarian for a lot of years, and in talking about how to do read alouds, to intentionally read a mentor text and to elicit a response. I would go through a text in advance and make sure I'm pointing out things and using sticky notes at points to remind myself to ask certain questions, because it's not like, you guys like blue? This one's blue. Let's turn the page and keep reading. There's a lot we can do with mentor texts, but intentionally thinking about in advance what we're going to ask to check for understanding. It's more than just, you guys got it? Thumbs up? All right, let's go. Because a lot of kids will just be like, yeah, and keep moving, because they don't, a lot of times people don't want to, stand out that they don't understand something. And then the last prompt here is what adaptation that they will make to address the learning needs of their focus student, because they chose that focus student and they need to make an adaptation to include them in that lesson. So what are they going to do? Maria, do you still have a question, or are you just stretching now? Sometimes people just leave their hands up because stretching. So, all right.
Yeah, sorry. I didn't bring it down.
Oh, okay. I just want to make sure I just want to make sure I am addressing it as we're going through. Thank you. All right. A lot of samples, great samples to take a look at, coming up with them in class. Fantastic. Giving them different scenarios, putting candidates in partners and giving them some different standards and saying, you're doing this and this. Let's come up with some goals, right? Sharing the process of it, thinking it through, doing that modeling, that think aloud. Excellent activity to do when working on these goals. When I was a special education teacher, we always talked about behavior criterion and conditions. And when I came to general education and we had this professional development on how to write learning goals back in 2011, I think, I was telling the other teachers around me, yeah, behavior criterion conditions, you do this. And then the facilitator came up to me and goes, were you a special ed teacher? And I was like, yeah, that's why you understand this a little bit better. But truly just going through that process with them, showing them how you think it through, it's an important skill that they will need to acquire. Template C is all about that summative assessment. So again, the emphasis here is after they teach that 3rd lesson, they're going to teach that or do that planned summative assessment. And so the prompts for this, you want to just scroll down a little bit, Julie, thank you. So they're going to restate their ELA, ELD learning goals for the unit in this template. Then they're going to indicate what they're planning to collect, whether it's a process, product, or a performance. Then they're going to describe how they're going to implement it, and then the evidence that they're going to look for in the response that shows that the students are progressing toward meeting or exceeding the ELD goals. We're focusing on what a student would show that means that they're meeting those goals. And then they would upload a blank copy. All right, we can take a look at some really, really dense rubrics right now. Okay, so we do recognize that these are extremely dense rubrics. There's a lot that's going into planning, and we only have 2 rubrics available to us in this academic year to put all of these concepts. But rubric 2.1 is focusing on standards and strands and ELA literacy learning goals and assessments. So standards and strands, goals, and assessments. That's what we're looking at here. And you'll notice there's a whole lot of different constructs. It's because we tried to break them up as much as possible so there weren't too many ands when ands weren't appropriate. Some, ELA literacy and ELD, that's appropriate, right? Because we're doing ELA with a foundational reading skill, an additional theme, and ELD. Those are the three that always go together. But if you put too many concepts in one construct, it could get lost. So the candidate, and again, level 3, like Julie was saying, that's clear. Level 2, the verb is vague. Level 1 is not there. So if it's clear, it's vague, or it's not there. And in level 4 and 5, it's one of those level 3 concepts more, and level 5 is one of those level 3 concepts much more. Okay, so construct 1, using information from recent learning and assessments. Construct 2 is those grade level appropriate ELA, ELD strand standards. And that's for the unit plan because they're not putting standards in each lesson. It's for the unit. Then the development of that grade level appropriate ELA literacy goal for the unit. We're not looking at individual lessons for that construct. We're looking at the unit goal. Then they develop grade level appropriate ELD goals that support the ELA literacy learning for the unit. So that the first one is ELA literacy, the second one is ELD. Then they're going to plan one or more formative assessment in each lesson. So 1 is for a level 3, but if you look at level 4, it's multiple formative assessments. Then the candidate plans one summative assessment that clearly measures the student's progress in meeting the ELA literacy and ELD learning goals. Now, for those of you that maybe downloaded all your materials on July 14th and you're looking at this contract and say, wait a minute, there's an and or there. I'm going to apologize to you right now. This is my mistake, my oversight. That was and or should be an and. They need to plan a summative assessment that assesses both ELA literacy and ELD. So the materials that are posted on our website now, they say and for this construct and for the next one, because that's about the rubric. It should say and. Please make sure as you are, going through your materials and a sincere apology about materials coming out and then having to pull them back and then reprint. It is a process. It is a process, and we do have lots of eyes on this. And I want to thank our lead assessors who help us look at these materials deeply, look at these rubrics, and help us to identify these spaces to ensure that we are fairly assessing the intent of this rubric, but it should be an and. And so make sure that as you're looking at these materials, it says and. And for the multiple subjects in PK-3, template I was also impacted. The template I that is available on the website and that is available for download when a candidate registers for their materials is corrected at this point. And any candidate who registered for version 2 before the correction was made, ES, Evaluation Systems of Pearson, is sending them an individual message in their portal. So they are going to be made aware of it, but we didn't have too many, but going forward, it is all corrected. And so they would see version 2.1 on that template I if it's impacted. And then, like I said, the next construct is all about that rubric that measures the ELA literacy and ELD learning goals. And the last construct there is the candidate's planning accurately addresses foundational reading skills, additional theme, and integrated ELD. Now, we have heard concerns from folks about people that may be speaking with an accent and such. This is in the planning. This is not something that we're recording. We don't have an accuracy construct in the video component, but we do recognize that someone may pronounce a word with an accent. That is not what we're talking about here for accuracy. We're talking about someone, the math examples are usually easier than the ELA literacy, but if somebody is just teaching something, I mean, completely incorrect, then that's what we're looking at. If they, they're teaching the cat C makes an X sound or C makes a T sound, whatever it is, that it's just incorrect. But yeah. All right, apologies. Let's go ahead and go to the next rubric. Okay, so this rubric here is now assets and interests, alignment to create that progression of learning, and then addressing foundational reading skills with the direct systematic explicit approach, actively engage students in the additional theme. For PK-3, it's in a play-based way, and integrating ELD. So we're looking at assets and interests, a line series of lessons, and including our three amigos, the foundational reading skills, the additional theme, and ELD. So that's the major themes of this rubric. So in their planning, they clearly leverage assets in our interests. They use UDL strategies. The unit includes 3 lessons that clearly align and build upon, and like I know, align and build upon. Assessors aren't looking for things to align and build upon. They're not looking for 2 separate things there. It's just a synonym and they kind of go together. Then when planning to teach foundational reading skills, we include that direct, systematic, and explicit approach. The candidate clearly plans to actively engage students, and that is play-based in PK-3. And they integrate ELD that supports foundational reading skills and the additional theme. And again, this is in planning. We're planning to integrate ELD to support both foundational reading skills and the additional theme. And they have a plan for adaptation that clearly addresses the focus student's assets, interests, and learning needs. So they identified that focus student for a reason. What are we doing there? All right, let's take a look. All right. Okay, let's take a look at teach and assess. Maybe we can skip down a little bit here. Always record with airplane mode on so that telemarketer call doesn't ruin your video candidates, letting them know that. And again, 1 to 4 clips totaling 20 minutes. Edits are allowable, or the candidate can have 4 separate videos. The size of video does matter. Make sure that they are checking that, and the instructions for all that is at the beginning of the guide. So we're looking for foundational reading skills, and with that direct and explicit approach, that systematic component is demonstrated in planning, not necessarily in teaching. Their additional theme, the assets in our interests, and using those to engage students with the additional theme. Integrated ELD, and the assessment of literacy. Now, the question that we've had about responding intentionally, oftentimes that is an adjustment to instruction, but an intentional response is that the candidate provides a formative assessment, takes a look at those responses, and makes a change to their instruction. They respond intentionally. They respond based on the information that they get from students or children. So it can be an adjustment to instruction typically, moving, speeding up, slowing down, repeating instructions, maybe stopping instruction, bringing people together, and then going over something again. Whatever it is, it's an intentional response. We can go ahead and scroll down. Keep on going down to the prompts. So these are the prompts. Again, they're going to be listed just like they are in the MPA template, where the candidate is saying, what clip number, timestamp, what they did, why they did it, and what was the impact. And that is the component where their analysis is coming into play. Let's go ahead and skip down to the rubrics. So these rubrics are a little bit shorter and they have a very specific emphasis. This rubric 2.3 is all about foundational reading skills. So a clear, and you'll see that term, demonstration and description. What we see in video is what we should see described in commentary. We don't need a big old long summary of what was in the video. We're looking for some very specific key elements in video. And that's why the table was brought about to help to focus the candidate's response. But foundational reading skills using that direct and explicit approach, and active engagement during the teaching of the foundational reading skills, and that clear demonstration of description of the literacy lessons described in step 1. We talked about that in the MPA. It's a similar construct. Because of the time, I'm not going to go into the level 4 and 5. We're just going to talk about level 3, but truly what the candidate needs to do in a level 4 is more of a level 3. Let's go ahead and go to rubric 2.4. So this rubric is focusing on that additional theme. So the candidate is leveraging assets in her interests while teaching the additional theme. And in this rubric for PK-3 is where the play-based learning comes into assessment. And then the candidate actively engages students with the additional theme. Let's go ahead and take a look at the next rubric. This rubric is all about universal design for learning and ELD. So the candidate is using at least one universal design for learning strategy and demonstrating it in video, and they are providing a demonstration of description of how they integrate ELD to support the foundational reading skills and or the additional theme. And that is an and or, and it's on purpose because it is challenging in 20 minutes of video over 3 days or potentially more days of instruction, depending upon how the lessons lay out, to capture an assessment that assesses both foundational reading skills and the additional theme. The candidate plans for it, and maybe their assessment only looks at the foundational reading skill or only looks at the additional theme. We just want to see that they are taking and they're using those formative assessments to measure students. So if they do not cover ELD, but they cover the additional theme, they get credit for that level 3, vice versa. But if you look at a level 4 and a 5, it's looking at both. And I do want to call out our level 5 is where our candidates are encouraged to use translanguaging as a resource. And oftentimes candidates may be English only, but this is an opportunity for them to potentially learn some concepts and words in other languages of the students that they support, and to use translanguaging as a way to reach out and support students. Let's go ahead and go to 2.6. This rubric is all about that monitor student learning and responding intentionally. So they are using formative assessments, they are monitoring that learning, and they are adjusting or responding intentionally to the students based on their responses. All right. All right, step 3, reflect. There were some shifts in this step because there were some duplicative pieces, but the first thing that a candidate does when they get to this step is they score that summative assessment using the rubric or performance criteria. Then they are going to look at their focus students' summative assessment results and provide them with that specific actionable feedback. And let's go ahead and keep scrolling down. And then they will, I think we can go ahead and keep scrolling. Yeah, sorry. And then they will complete template I. And this is where they're going to reflect and analyze the summative assessment results for the focus student and the group. They need to look at both. So let's go ahead and scroll down a little bit and take a look at some of those prompts. You'll notice the table is back, but the table is very focused. The goals are for the unit, not necessarily by the lesson. So if the candidate has an ELA literacy and they chose to do 2 goals, one for the foundational reading skills, one for the additional theme, they can add a row to the table, or they can just put them both in there. But we're looking at the learning goals and the number of students that met, exceeded, and did not yet meet. Just a visualization after they describe the information they gathered while teaching the unit. And then if we can keep scrolling down a little bit, taking a look at their analysis of the summative and formative assessment results, they're asked to talk about for the group and for the focus student. It's important that they are thinking about both as they are moving forward. We can take a look at the next prompt. So based on their analysis, what are the results and their observations, what was the impact of their instructional approach? We're not asking for effectiveness anymore, just like we talked about in the MPA, we're talking about impact. And if they were to teach it again, what instructional changes would they make? And then there are some questions for the focus student only where they're describing the specific actionable feedback and how they will help to, how the specific actionable feedback will advance the understanding of the student. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at this rubric, and it's another one that, like Julie was saying, in step 3 in the MPA, it's a little dense. But the first piece here is their reflection includes a clear analysis of the group and the focus students' assessment results. We're looking for both, the candidate to look at both. Then based on that analysis, right, and understandings from the lessons, what was the understandings and misconceptions related to the group and the focus students' progress? And we do prompt the candidates to discuss both, but this is where we're looking at some of those both pieces. The candidate provides that specific actionable feedback to the focus student. Then they provide a clear description of the impact of their instructional approaches and their choices of student activities. And then they give an explanation for the instructional changes that they would make. And then let's, and I do recognize that there are questions, but let's get through step 4 and then we can come back. So for those of you who have been in this world for a while, or for those of you that are new, this is a continuation of what they are doing in step 3. They are looking at the evidence for that focus student, and they are planning follow-up instruction, whether it is a extension or a reteach. Based on all the evidence that they have, what do they do next? So based on the evidence that they have, what is the next step for that focus student? Now, the candidate can teach just the focus student, or they can teach the focus student and 1 other, 2 others, 3 others, the whole class. The lesson has to be focused on the focus student. It doesn't matter who is in the video, the lesson has to be built for that focus student. So let's go ahead and take a look at the rubric for this step. So they include a clear plan for follow-up instruction based on the information from the assessment results and what happened during the unit. And their video and commentary, it needs to include a targeted intervention and or individualized strategy, or instruction that deepens or advances the focus students' work. And in step 3, we did ask for candidates to provide some specific site-specific spaces where they have examples of evidence to support their instruction. It wasn't in a level 3 in that rubric. It was in a level 4-5 in that rubric, but here it's in a level 3. So the candidate needs to clearly use specific examples from step 1, 2, or 3 to support their follow-up instruction decision making. All right, let's take a look. Julie, have you been checking on the chat? Is there anything that we need to answer aloud, or just want to make sure? Okay, so video clip 4, assessment of literacy. Is this referring to one of the formative assessments from the lesson? Yes. So within the lessons, the candidates are they're doing a formative assessment, and they are responding intentionally to formative assessment. The summative assessment, it's given but it's not part of a lesson. And so they reserve the summative assessment for step 3, but they do video record it because it's part of the teaching. Okay. So foundational level skill in each lesson, traditional theme, at least one lesson, ELD in each lesson. Yes, the candidate can do any combination of foundational reading skills and additional themes. They must have at least one lesson where foundational reading skills are taught, but the additional themes can be in the other. But ELD, integrated ELD, needs to support everything. Okay, so prompt 7 in part I, using actionable feedback, part H. So the specific actionable feedback is based on the summative assessment response. It's no longer based on anything that happened in the teaching of the lessons in step 2. It's based on that summative assessment response. Are there any other questions that I can address? Hands raised, and for those of you that have time, you can stay online. We will just end at noon, but we will continue the recording. So any questions that anybody has before we go back to the PowerPoint? So the final drafts, I see a question in the chat of getting a copy of this assessment. This is pulled off the website, right, Julie? So this assessment guide is live right now on the website. We are working with our IT team. We've been sending them a whole bunch of documents, like 180 documents that we had to send them to upload. And so we are going through and checking to make sure that they do have these materials. But Julie, have you checked and seen if everything's there?
Everything's there. All the final versions are there. They're not only on our PA website, but they're also in the Google resource folder. So I'll go ahead and link that as well. And I'll put the PA website in there as well, too.
Daryl, you have your hand up?
Yeah, hey, thanks. Last week you mentioned that the single subject templates needed some revising. Are the versions that we're seeing in the Google folder have those revisions?
Yes, they are.
Yes,
they
they
are
are.
the revised, updated things. Yes.
Perfect. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot pull. There we go.
Oh, you need the
no, I got it.
folder?
I got it. Giving me grief. There, got it.
All right.
Let me just show everyone. Can you still see my screen? Yeah. I'm going to put this link in here. You go to resources and these accordions. Here's the APA, the CalTPA, the EdSped assessment guide. So CalTPA, it's all right here. So you can just go in, MPA, for example, and you can download the guide and all the templates. Everything's final version.
I think we can head back to the presentation and wrap up and then stay on for questions.
And I just put that link in there as well.
Thank you, Julie. And Julie has done so much work on our performance assessment webpage, working with our IT team, getting things there. So thank you. I want to give you a round of applause.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah. We really hope that the emphasis of our website will be in supporting faculty and candidates without having to do. We will still put things in the EQ Weekly. We will still send stuff out in blast, but we on our listservs. But we hope that we put every webinar and Zoom link for the whole year on our calendar, and so you can go ahead and mark your calendars and do those pieces there. So, all right. So, okay. There was a real quick question. Does the focus need to be around composing a writing piece, or can we just have them focus on foundational reading skills and additional theme? I give examples of writing all the time because I was a literacy teacher, I was a librarian, I was a writing teacher, I taught 8th grade ELA and ELD for a long time. So those are always my examples. Sorry, I'll get more creative about that. They don't have to all be writing. It is foundational reading skills and an additional theme. However, the candidate chooses to address those pieces, but that's what we're looking for in the LPA. Condition codes are going to remain the same from last academic year, with the exception of if you have to tell a candidate what will not get scored, an incomplete submission will not get scored. An incomplete submission is not enough evidence. If they're missing a part, if it's illegible, if videos are not playable, if they speed up videos, we are not going to sit there and try to figure out what they're saying. It can't be scored. So please make sure they have a complete submission, that it's legible. Please work with candidates on making sure that they are naming their templates correct, because we often see someone upload the same document twice. And that to me is that maybe they just didn't have they didn't sit down and title these things properly and put them in a little list, or they were in a hurry to submit stuff. They will continue to receive a $50 voucher on their first condition code, and to re-register, it gets applied to their account. But be careful. Make sure they're registering for the right subject matter area. But we do also have another condition code that we are adding in this year. Candidates need to make sure they're filming these in front of children with children. And we've seen some interesting things. Like last year, we saw a PK-3 submission with a bunch of teenagers sitting around pretending like they were first graders. No, that will be most likely an A1 condition code and an email to faculty. So let candidates know that even though it doesn't say that there's a visibility requirement, if we suspect that a candidate is filming in an empty classroom, then we will contact program. We will look at an A1. So they do need to be working with children. They need to be working with the students. They need to be working with the appropriate age group. They need to be working in a classroom. They need to be working in an educational setting, depending upon what their context is. And so those are all component pieces that we are looking for, but the condition codes are linked in this presentation. We are PDFing this presentation and putting it in the Google folder after, so you don't have to ask for links or feverishly click on everything before we get out. But we can go ahead and go to the next slide. So this is also a live link to our calendar that Julie put in the chat, but these are some deep dives that are coming up. Today we're here in the multiple subjects. EdSped are coming up next, and those are the links to register. We are recording all of our webinars and putting them on our YouTube channel and removing the deep dives from last year to avoid any kind of confusion. We can go to the next slide. And having candidates watch these deep dives can be helpful too. They can be a resource for candidates. The Acceptable Supports webinar is coming up on August 25th. We will be talking about acceptable supports, and I always tell people, let your conscience be your guide, and who is doing the work. Is it you or is it the candidate? That is where acceptable supports start. But we will have that link to register there. We can go ahead and go to the next slide. Coordinator meetings. These are the dates for our winter coordinator meeting, summer coordinator meeting, our new coordinator orientation. For those of you who have been a coordinator for some time now and want a refresher on some of the materials available, representatives from ES will also be there talking about results analyzer and any ways to access data. So if you would like to attend, you're more than welcome to. And we will be recording that one as well. We can go ahead and go to the next slide. So some digging deeper webinars that we have scheduled for this academic year, with the links to register. So if you are interested in attending or designating any faculty to attend, but we also will be recording and posting these to our YouTube channel. We can go to the next slide. Faculty workshops. These are, we plan to do the equivalent of an assessor light training. So we'll bring faculty in, we will be looking at the structure and theory of action, and then going through a submission that is pre-scored and identifying all the evidence for you as we go through the rubric. Then the fun part happens where we're going to put you in teams and you're going to consensus score a pre-scored submission, but the evidence is not going to be identified for you. And you will come back, we'll say, what are your scores? Put them in the chat, and then here was the true score, and this is why. And we encourage faculty to attend in teams, but if you don't have anybody else, if you're, the main person or one person that's attending from your institution, you'll get to make some new friends that day. We'll put you in with other faculty from other institutions to go through this process. They are scheduled from 9 a.m. to noon, and we are doing MPA on one day and LPA on the other, simply because of the depth that we're going to go into with real submissions. Now, these will not be recorded because we are going to have video evidence that we're going to be sharing. Even though we're going to most likely blur video, we do not want to break any trust with people that sign these releases by posting these things on YouTube. So if you are unable to attend in person, we are unfortunately unable to do that, like I said, a recording. But if you maybe are a multiple subjects person and you can only attend the single subjects world language, it'll be a very similar process. It just won't be the exact subject matter area. We go to the next slide. Pass rates and network supports. Many of you were paying attention in the June meeting with the new pass rate bands. Any program whose first attempt pass rate is 69% or below, you will have some additional accreditation activities to complete. And this is going to be a 4-part series. It's available to everyone. It's awesome materials for your standard 5 and your program standard 5 for that continuous improvement. Oftentimes folks have are challenged in that continuous improvement piece, but these webinars and individual supports are going to be in support of that standard 5. So whether you are in that pass rate network support component, it's available to everyone. So multiple measures report, everybody is going to be getting that in November. Analyzing data, that will be a lot of results analyzer and having conversations about that data, creating those action plans and implementing those action plans. We can go ahead and go to the next slide. The Meredith Fellows Implementation Conference, we have the dates here, February 4th and 5th. We will continue to present this conference via Zoom. We hope that we will see some fabulous presentations from programs. It's always a wonderful opportunity to see all the ingenious things that you all do to support candidates. Next slide. So contact information, please. I just want to let you know, if you say, hey, I got a new coordinator, here's their name and email address, can you add them to the ADS? I cannot do that. That is not something I am able to do. Julie can't, and she's magic, but I can't do it either, and I am not magic. So the only people that can do that are documented people from your institution. So please, if you are, there is a list that was pulled last Friday. If you look on that list and say, wow, that person hasn't worked here for 3 years, then please, and you're unsure of what to do next, there's some steps in there. But if you are unsure, contact that annual data system email address. Those folks can help you. If you email me, then I'll probably forward it to that annual data system, because I can't change those. Only institutional representatives are able to do so. We can go to the next slide. Email performance assessment lists, please register for these if you would like updates and reminders and things that we send out on occasion. We do have the different lists here. Go ahead and go to the next slide. Office hours and PLCs, we will be resuming these in September. So after Labor Day, we will have program office hours, first and third Fridays from 9 to 10, candidate office hours, 4:15 to 5 p.m. list those on your website. We actually had a candidate show up to office hours thinking they were at their institution office hours. And I'm like, no, you're talking to the CTC. And she's like, oh, she was surprised. And then we will be having our TPA PLCs and starting in September at the second Friday from 10 to 11 a.m. This is, again, going to be an open forum. Please think about topics that you'd like us to discuss, and so we can have a good conversation and build some community. And CalAPA, for those of you who also serve administrators, we will have their PLC as well on those same Fridays. We can go ahead and go to the next slide. And thank you. 1204, not bad, not bad. But it was a lot to cover, and the shifts and changes are a lot, but hopefully they will be beneficial to programs, to candidates, and to ultimately to the students that they will serve here in California. My children, who are both in school today, yeah, happy about that. It was good taking them to school yesterday. Email addresses to contact if you have any questions, and if you have any questions of Pearson, we do include their website there. All right, I think we can probably stop recording, Julie, and stay on and maybe landscape, or no, sorry, gallery mode to answer questions.
You got it. All right, thank you, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and stop recording.
Mm-hmm.